Look at how beautiful the scales of this red dragon are, how majestic its body is, how dignified its head is. We kobolds should serve such a great true dragon. Besides, a grown red dragon will be stronger than a blue dragon. You have a point. The two kobolds retreated into the burrow, their voices fading away. We must hurry back and inform the chief before that precious beast is eaten as a snack by the great true dragon. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 19-18, Heart Energy. Chapter 19, Chapter 18, Heart Energy. You want my protection, to become my beloved. Karon sat crouched on the ground with one foot lightly pressing the pretending to be dead gold-eating beast. He loudly thundered, spreading wide his wings to showcase the intimidation of the giant dragon, while casting a cold gaze at the group of chattering kobolds below. This group of kobolds mostly ranged between 90 centimeters in height, with slender builds resembling lizards, brown-red skin, and heads more akin to crocodiles of the water. These kobolds were dressed in rags, some with nothing more than a piece of cloth around their waists. These kobolds might as well be called lizardmen, with thin dragon blood in them, only their incessant barking matched the identity of a kobold. The issue was that the barking was in dragon language, though to Karon's ears, it sounded like Indian accented English. He needed a certain level of reading comprehension and listening skill to figure out what these expressive kobolds meant to convey through their actions and language. Yes, yes. A few particularly strong kobolds came forward, kneeling before Karon. The one at the front excitedly crawled forward to embrace Karon's long, sharp dragon claw. The increasingly enthusiastic barking sounds rang in Karon's ears. Noble and mighty true dragon, your humble admirers have always been searching for you. Your scales, more beautiful than moonlight, will harden our skin, your bones, sturdier than armor, will support our skulls. The great dragon heart will ignite our magic. We are servants of the giant dragon, we live for the giant dragon, and serving you is our only wish. The kobolds still clustered together followed their leader, kneeling down in unison, echoing their leader's words, and lauding the aloof red dragon. Although finding the flattery somewhat awkward and noisy, Karon still enjoyed listening to the kobolds' words. No wonder many giant dragons enjoy enlisting weakling races like kobolds as their beloveds. Just with this talent for cajolery, Karon thought these kobolds could find themselves a position under him. Moreover, although the kobolds have weak combat power, the race does have redeeming qualities. Kobolds are combative and hard-working, adept at trap-making and mining, and put much emphasis on tribe expansion, thus showing great compliance to the ruler's will, especially when their ruler is a giant dragon. Karon raised his paw, the enormous dragon claw completely encompassing the kobold leader's head, gently pressing down to indicate assent. I allow you to submit, you will receive my protection, free to roam and hunt within the territory of the dragon group, you will offer me everything. Thank you, great true dragon, you are forever our master. The excited kobold leader kissed Karon's paw. Entirely unafraid that the dragon before him could easily crush his head, while the kobolds behind him cheered. With the protection of the giant dragon, they would no longer have to live solely in dark dungeons, they could also freely live under the sun, with ample food, and the tribe would rapidly expand. Karon paid little attention to this, his consciousness was drawn to the fluctuations of that rune in his mind. Tiny, weak forces intermittently linked the peculiar rune within the dragon's mind and the prostrate kobolds beneath him. This was not the so-called power of faith, as Karon's heritage informed him, but this power resembled the power of thought from sentient creatures. Clearly, the rune within the vortex could consume the power of thought from sentient creatures as food, emitting pure energy that hovered around the rune, gradually augmenting the vortex's power. Most importantly, the drawing upon this power of thought was not just a one-off but continuous. A peculiar smile spread across Karon's dragon face, he felt he was one step closer to mastering this power. Though far from comprehensive understanding, at least now he had a rough idea on how to utilize it. If he put in enough effort, perhaps by the time of his next slumber period, the vortex could accumulate enough energy, leading to further strengthening. The standing kobold sorcerer saw the unconcealed smile on the dragon's face and mustered the courage to request of Karon, "Mighty Master, esteemed true dragon, may we be granted the gold-eating beast under your foot? We can use this beast to better serve you." The red behemoth remained silent, as he didn't have a method to tame the gold-eating beast. Giving it to the kobolds to explore ores wasn't a bad idea, since they would be working for him anyway. But he wished to impress upon these kobolds that both favor and fear emanated from him, undistorted by others. He suddenly opened his mouth, letting out a loud roar, "How bold you are to covet the possessions of a giant dragon! Ha, how amusing and audacious!" A jet of searing, concentrated dragon breath spewed out with those words, incinerating the kobold sorcerer who dared to request of the giant dragon. The relentless dragon breath burned fiercely over the kobold, who rolled and howled in the flames, while the remaining kobolds hastily knelt down, pleading for the dragon's forgiveness amidst the howls. The kobold leader and the remaining kobold sorcerers knocked their heads on the ground like pounding garlic, not daring to utter a single bark. "If you want me to forgive you, then amuse me. Go back and open your tribe's treasure vault, offering all your treasures to me. I will bring the dragon group, awaiting your tribute." The malevolent red dragon made up his mind, grasping the immobile, feigning dead gold-eating beast beneath his feet, flapping his wings to fly away, gradually leaving behind the kneeling kobold tribe. Originally, acting on blue dragon leader Carlet's words, Karon intended to temporarily maintain the current territorial scope of the dragon group, as the group's power still wasn't robust. Over the years, the steady expansion of the dragon group's territory, centered around the mountains, spanned roughly 150 miles in radius, with forest occupying only half the area compared to grassland. Some might find the land occupied by the dragon group insufficient, but taking Kyoto as an example from Karon's past life, including suburbs, Kyoto is 160 kilometers long east to west and 176 kilometers north to south. Meaning the land currently held by the dragon group is about half the size of Kyoto, while the entire country translates to roughly 3,500 miles around. Presently, the territory is ample enough to sustain the juvenile dragon group and Axie and Carlet. But with a newfound direction, Karon decided to alter strategies. The dragon group would gradually purge the territory of all sentient species in upcoming times. Then, after the dragon group passed through the next slumber period and his power grew once more, he would lead the group on a journey of conquest. Yet currently, most vital of all, Karon needed to establish himself as the actual leader of the dragon group, no longer just a verbal submission or the strongest playmate in the eyes of the juveniles. It was crucial to set some rules for the dragon group's future development, while everything was still unformed. With the powerful flapping of wings stirring up gales, Karon, having made a slightly mad decision, soared over the prairie skies. He needed to return to the dragon nest, to gather the juvenile dragons out on patrol. Ah! A resonant and vigorous dragon roar reverberated through the canyon's dragon nest, layers of echoes blending with dragon language diffusing from the dragon nest. The red dragon standing at the summit with wings spread and chest puffed out, roared with effort. It was a summons to the dragon group, a leader's call to the juvenile dragons. He waited, anticipating the juvenile's response. The first to hear Karon's call was black dragon Rosani, fishing in the nearby river. Swallowing the carp toyed in his claw, Rosani surfaced, flapping his wings and roaring into the sky. Antagena, sneaking bites in the orchard, along with the white dragon siblings, responded as well, flying back to the dragon nest. Then came blue dragon Das, red dragon Kleena, all the juveniles heading towards the dragon nest. Oxy, technically not needing to heed Karon's call, being the great dragon of the family and only surpassed by Karon in authority, was too curious and flew to the dragon nest. When he landed atop the dragon nest mountain cliff, he found that all dragons, except for Carlet, had gathered. The tiny creatures he once viewed as weaklings had grown, their average 4 to 5 meter bodies beginning to exhibit the power of a giant dragon, forming the precursor of a powerful dragon race. Moreover, the family cohesion far surpassed that of other dragon groups, and the future leader of the family would also far exceed that of other dragon groups. Before the curious Axie could ask anything, the robust juvenile dragon leader Karon spoke first with a smile. Now it is the dragon group's hunting time, Axie, you should join too. Perplexed, Axie glanced at Karon, then to the dormant volcano cave, then nodded, all right. Source, webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 20-19, Red Dragon. Chapter 20, Chapter 19, Red Dragon. I wonder what Karon is going hunting for this time. All secretive, White Dragon Gomot grumbled while nestling in the dragon group, eyeing Black Dragon Rosani's rear. Maybe he's discovered some powerful monster and wants us to help take it down. Black Dragon Rosani casually flapped his wings. Ever since he missed the opportunity in their first hunt for the Wild Boar King, he's been keen on proving himself, not wanting the dragon group to see him as a weak dragon. What are so many kobolds doing down there? Rosani spotted the distant gathering of the Dogman tribe. Karon isn't planning to use the dragon group just to wipe out these weak kobolds, is he? I could handle this sort of thing on my own. If so, shining golden mines. I can smell the thick scent of treasure. Karon, did you bring us here just to kill off these vile kobolds and reclaim the treasure? The greedy Antagina's sharp eyes spotted piles of gold and various ores stacked like small mountains. There were also some crudely refined gold ingots, neatly stacked in various sizes. By the small mounds of gold, several baskets filled with jewels made from various gemstones, the kobold's hobby, were set in wooden frames. The shadows of the dragon group's mighty wings approached swiftly under the sun. On the ground, the terrified kobolds knelt in fear amidst the overwhelming presence of the dragons, some of the more timid even wetting the ground in panic. The dragon group landed before the kneeling kobolds, the dust rising to obscure the small statures of the kobolds, but the dragons didn't care. Every dragon's eyes brimmed with greed, looking at the pile of treasures on the ground, even Axie. He had never seen so much gold before. This was the treasure accumulated over countless years by a nearly 1,000-member-strong Dogman tribe, treasures created from endless searching and digging beneath the plains. Even among adult giant dragons, such a hoard was rare. Greed born of the evil dragon bloodline consumed the mind of the giant dragon. Uncontrollably, Axie walked towards the gold piled high, his claws crushing two terrified kobolds beneath him into paste without a second thought. You better stop, Axie. These are my beloved, and I will not allow you to harm them. This is also my treasure, and you're not allowed to touch it. The warning voice of the red dragon sounded from behind. Roaring, Axie, his mind clouded by greed, fiercely turned and howled, I am the young dragon of the family, nurturing you little ones. You belong to the family, and these treasures should be under my control and distribution. Anyone who disagrees, I'll take them down, and their share will be gone. The juvenile dragons similarly driven by greed swarmed, their minds clearer, angrily retreating a step. Facing the threat of young dragon Axie, they temporarily lacked the ability to resist. Karon didn't retreat but advanced, stepping forward with eyes fixed on the frenzied blue dragon, uttering each word, Axie, blinded by burdensome greed, show me your so-called strength here. Let's see if you are qualified to rule my treasure. If I lose, the treasure is yours. If you lose, then submit to me, proclaim me as king. The frenzied Axie became even more agitated instantly, lightning flashing between the nostrils of the blue dragon, controller of the storm and lightning in the skies. He took to the air, his voice chilling, come on, Karon, seems the little dragon's flattery has made you lose your way. I'll give you this chance to challenge me, prepare for death, I won't hold back. Karon, Das, full of concern, stopped the red dragon ready to take to the sky. The blue dragon, known for wisdom among the evil dragons, claimed wisdom, and though Das, a giant dragon who also revered strength, looked down on those who relied on brute strength, he admired Karon's ability to restrain the chaotic bloodline of the evil dragon. Hence he liked and respected the rational over the wild red dragon. Time is on your side, Karon. We can temporarily leave the treasure with Axi, and when we grow stronger, we can take it back. The blue dragon knew the red dragon's power far exceeded his own, never having a battle that demanded his all, but in his eyes, not yet able to contend with Axi. Yes, time is on our side, the other juvenile dragons chimed in, their greed subsiding. Even though dragons grow to be more powerful with time, when they become powerful enough, Axi too would be stronger, but they were a small group, stronger in numbers, and none of the juvenile dragons believed they would ever be weaker than Axi. Only the bull-headed young female dragon Kleena snorted fire sparks, her battle-hungry red dragon's blood urging her to take a heavy step forward, or we can rush him now and take him down. Karon, just give the command, and I will follow you into battle, never retreating. Karon let out a thunderous laugh, his 13-meter wingspan stretched wide as he stood upright, looking down joyfully at the few juvenile dragons surrounding him. You know, I'm very happy today, and I really want to know what level I can reach if I give it my all. Your task is to guard my treasures. The booming laughter of the red dragon gradually turned frantic, the nascent evil dragon blood was no longer suppressed, the uncontrollable frenzy and destructive desire surged with the bloodline, the deep red and golden scales of the giant dragon shone with dazzling brilliance, and the heat emitted from the gaps in the scale armor transformed into a magma-like aura enveloping the giant beast. The rapidly surging magic power within the patterns turned the dragon's broad wings into a pair of red-hot iron wings, and with frenzied laughter, the red dragon shattered the ground beneath him, soaring into the sky. In this battle, Karon chose to abandon all technique and awareness, surrendering his body to the frantically roaring evil dragon blood, wanting to defeat his enemies with sheer strength and physique, and then trample them underfoot. Karon disregarded Axi, who held the advantageous position, charging directly toward the blue dragon that had long been ready in the sky, hoping the blue dragon would also dive down. Even though the red dragon was powerful, at the juvenile stage it was impossible to confront a blue dragon that had surpassed the end of the young dragon stage head-on in strength. Such physical collision might cause the red dragon to fail in dodging and plummet swiftly, possibly sustaining serious injuries. But he would also seize the opportunity to tear down the more agile blue dragon in the sky, and then tear him apart with fangs and body. But the blue dragon towering in the sky, upon seeing the crazed eyes, the wings turned to fire wings, and the demon-like giant dragon encased in magma aura charging upwards, could not help but feel a sliver of hesitation and wavering in his heart. This was not the intimidation from dragon power, but aura blooming from the depths of his heart overshadowing the blue dragon's mind. Just hesitating for that split second, Axi missed the opportunity to strike, forced to dodge the red dragon's onslaught by shifting his form, while the blue dragon opened his mouth, a long-prepared lightning breath traversed through the air, bringing the ozone scent of scorching air in its wake. The lightning breath, like actual lightning, neared in the next second, at a speed hard for the naked eye to react to. But the red dragon's gaze was locked on Axi's figure all along, and as Axi opened his mouth, the red dragon had already reacted. Whoosh! An intensely concentrated flame transformed into a fist-sized fire pillar shot from Karon's mouth, the swift fire pillar making a thunderous sound as it ripped through the air. The young blue dragon's lightning breath was far stronger than a juvenile red dragon's flame breath, but the red dragon before him was not comparable to ordinary juvenile dragons. The magic flames contained within the concentrated fire pillar kept burning away the power of the lightning breath, and the two dragons' breaths were unexpectedly evenly matched in the air for a short period. The blue dragon had no choice but to flap his wings to dodge the advancing assault of the red dragon trying to approach him, simultaneously increasing the intensity to suppress the red dragon's flames with his breath. He realized he could not be the first to withdraw his breath now, otherwise, he'd not only endure the strike from the flame breath but also allow the red dragon to take the opportunity to get close and gain the upper hand. But he could not keep dodging like this indefinitely, so the annoyed blue dragon, while maintaining its breath, began chanting in dragon language from his throat. This was his awakened magic spell, a treasure found in the blue dragon's heritage, the lightning cage. Giant dragons possess specialized breathing organs, and their flexible tongues and unique throats enable them to chant dragon language and release magic while breathing. The red dragon's sturdy, bulging dragon horns also began to glow. As magic power rapidly gathered, the soaring high temperature scorched the air, a fireball formed between the 6-branched dragon horns, and with its bright flame color and scorching heat, it charged towards the chanting blue dragon. The blue dragon closed his eyes, maintaining the lightning breath. Boom! The explosive flame disrupted the blue dragon's chant and also interrupted the standoff between the two dragons' breaths. The flames from the exploding fireball hadn't yet dissipated when the red dragon seized the opportunity to break through the barriers of the flames, reaching before the blue dragon, extending his forepaw covered in scale fragments cracked by the fireball to firmly grasp the blue dragon's slender neck. The power from the awakened ancient bloodline erupted, the domain of all things turned to ash emerged, the searing temperature that intended to burn everything shrouded the sky, making the air ripple with heat. The blue dragon, coming to his senses, felt the suppression from the red dragon's domain. The magic that was usually readily available around him was also being burned, and within the domain, it slowly turned into a magic desert, leaving only the power belonging to the red dragon. Oxa struggled fiercely. The power of a young dragon could not be entirely suppressed by Karon. The blue dragon's sharp claws tore through the earth element protective layer covering Karon's chest and abdomen surface, then ripped apart the metal element adhered on the scales forming an exterior armor, and finally broke through the sturdy red dragon scales. But the strength of the claws ended there, only making a few seemingly large but actually shallow cuts on the red dragon's body, from which the scorching hot dragon blood oozed out, igniting the anger of the evil dragon blood. The wounded evil dragon's rage surged, opening its massive tooth-filled maw to bite down on the blue dragon's moving left front claw. The fierce dragon head twisted left and right, brutally biting and tearing off Axe's left front claw. The gushing dragon blood splashed onto Karon's face, mixing with the red dragon's blood, dripping from the high altitude, while the agonized wailing Axe was also yanked down by the enraged red dragon, crashing heavily from the high skies. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 21-20, Axe, Flexible and Unyielding. Chapter 21, Chapter 20, Axe, Flexible and Unyielding. Bang! The blue dragon Axe fell onto the grassland, his facial features bleeding, still with the strength to howl in agony, but the dragon group and kobold's attention had long shifted away from him. Boiling evil dragon blood made Karon emit a victorious roar, even though the all-out battle had left him somewhat overburdened. The overly agitated magic power made all his muscles and organs scream with pain, but these all transformed into majestic, stirring roars that echoed across the land. The juvenile dragons watched the red dragon stand upright and bleeding all over. Although he quickly landed, the boiling domain power reduced everything within 100 meters to ash, and the ground beneath was like purgatory with the land burnt dry of moisture, showcasing the force and majesty belonging to the king of the dragon group. At this moment, the juvenile dragons felt an inner submission. Karon was no longer just the strongest among their playmates. The dragon group's response to Karon's summons was no longer merely a response to a powerful companion, and Karon was not only the pivot bonding the dragon group. Karon accomplished what they couldn't, and thus the dragon group crowned him king at this moment, not just as a verbal leader of the juvenile dragons, but as the master of the dragon group. This was evident from the stable force of the mysterious runes silently linking the juvenile dragons with Karon's mind. As for Carlette, the dragon group deliberately ignored her. Maybe tomorrow, next month, or next year, Carlette would ultimately be just a member of the dragon group, and the dragon group would no longer fear her authority. Is this Karon's true power? White Dragon Gomot and his brothers looked in awe at the young king of the dragon group, their former idol for swearing. The power of the red dragon was a distant dream for the slender white dragons. Perhaps Karon should be called the Purgatory Tyrant in the future. Or perhaps the Purgatory Monarch, the composed blue dragon Das said, covering his trembling voice with a calm demeanor. Which juvenile dragon earns a title at a young age anyway? Titles that are too famous invite trouble. A dragon group that's not strong enough can't deal with those pesky treasure hunters and dragon hunters. Black Dragon Rosani, often filled with the philosophy of broad accumulation, delayed kingship from following Karon, rasped cynically, "It's more fitting for Karon to earn this title once he becomes a young dragon." The two glowing female dragons didn't express their opinions, their actions spoke for them. Kleena and Antagena walked forward, limbs lowered, their proud heads bowed, displaying complete submission from the great dragons. Blue Dragon Axi was in a dire condition, his left forelimb torn off, bleeding internally after the fall, and many scales had been ripped and fallen off during the battle. However, these injuries were not very serious for a great dragon, most wounds would heal with proper rest, and the broken forelimb would regrow after the next sleep cycle. He would just have to be a limping dragon for a while. Thus, despite feeling aggrieved and shocked at being unable to defeat the juvenile dragons in his clan, Axi decisively expressed submission to Karon. Now gleefully sitting within the dragon group, preparing to distribute treasure. After all, the allure of treasure was instinctive to great dragons, just as greedy humans sought treasure to change their lives, but great dragons simply wanted to possess treasure, no matter its use. The dragon group crouched around Karon, who sat in front of gold and silver piled into small hills. These, roughly smelted by the kobolds, were not very pure, mixed with various other minerals and varying in size, but the sheer quantity was immense. At this moment, the dragon group watched Karon's actions, and the red dragon's dazzling scales were not outshone by the brilliance of gold and silver. Karon crouched, using his massive dragon claws to split the gathered gold, silver, and jewels into two piles. Other ores and unrefined precious metals were placed aside. One pile was larger, and one was smaller, even so, both piles of treasure were vast. Then Karon divided the smaller pile into 8 parts, 7 equal ones, with the remaining one being twice the size of a single other portion. Finally, Karon sat down and pointed to the distributed treasures, saying, "These treasures were originally offered to me by my beloved and should legally belong solely to me, but I desire to create an unprecedentedly powerful dragon group. Therefore, today, I will distribute my treasures among you, marking the start of the dragon group's pact." Black Dragon Rosani withdrew his gaze from the endearingly shiny treasure, licked his lips, and spoke, "Speak, Karon, you are now the leader of the dragon group, I will support your will, especially since you're generously sharing the treasure with us." Blue Dragon Das was thoughtful. He differed from the other juvenile dragons as he had known early on that the red dragon had his own ideas and plans, yet he undoubtedly supported Karon, so he nodded. Karon looked at the dragon group, attentive and listening, then began to speak. "The dragon group should be a true community in the future, the wealth of the dragon group belongs to each dragon. With the increase in dragon group's wealth, each dragon's wealth increases. However, the dragon group will reward dragons contributing to the clan and penalize those harming the clan in the future. The more one contributes to the dragon group, the more rewards the clan will grant." Oxy also agreed. This demand wasn't excessive, and to him, it was positive news. He had been a model dragon for several years, thinking the future rewards would be lucrative. Moreover, now the family had a few large fish and small fish but hadn't accumulated much treasure, and Axi and Carlet's assets together probably didn't surpass the gold brick Karon sat on. "Good," Karon said satisfactorily, looking at the dragon group, which under a carrot and big stick deterrent had no opposing views. Then he stretched out his dragon claw towards the largest treasure. "Then the pact is established. This treasure will be placed in the treasure vault established for the dragon group, serving as development funds for the dragon group territory and capital for the dragon group's growth. In the future, all profits generated by the dragon group territory, besides supplying the day-to-day expenses of the dragon group, will be converted into wealth and income for the treasure vault. Then, distribution will occur on this day each year. The harder the great dragons work, the more they earn. Contributing nothing means no treasure rewards." "I have finished speaking. Who agrees?" who opposes? The great dragons were not too keen on having future dragon group territory profits added to the clan's treasury, but they were greedy, not foolish. They knew as the dragon group's power grew, it could bring them more benefits. An individual dragon, alone, needed constant vigilance for plunder by other clansmen and scrutiny from other races, but under the dragon group's power, their treasures would be guarded safely beyond compare to the solitary dragon's security. Moreover, the dragon group was aware of the consequences if they opposed Karon's views now, just looking at the miserable Axi sufficed. However, why did Axi now seem to be put on a cheerful display? The red dragon swept his gaze across the dragon group. Apparently, none wanted to test his fists larger than sandbags, so he nodded, if no dragon opposes, come receive your treasures. Roaring, white dragon Gomot rushed forward, embracing his treasure, not forgetting to flatter, Karon, you are truly a generous king, I, Gomot will be your staunch supporter henceforth. Other great dragons followed suit, clutching their treasures, faces brimming with happiness as they inhaled the fragrance of the treasure. Two small female dragons actually rolled directly on their portion, while Karon also quietly lay on his treasure, savoring the fruits of his harvest. But soon the dragon group faced a happy dilemma. Even divided into several portions, the Kobold tribe's countless years' collection of gold and silver treasures was a trove unimaginable for many unsuccessful great dragons. Several juvenile dragons simply couldn't transport their treasures back to the dragon nest. Even for the young dragon Axi, the dragon's inherently treasure-transporting stomach wasn't enough to store his treasures, and the hefty gold and silver blocks couldn't be hidden beneath dragon scales like gold coins. And Karon, who not only received the most, also needed to transport the treasure belonging to Carlet and the largest portion for the clan's treasury. Karon was troubled, but he hoped for more such troubles in the future. Luckily, he still had newly recruited Beloved, thus he ordered the kobolds to chop large trees and fashion transport tools, conducting all treasure and minerals to the dragon nest. Unwilling to leave their treasures alone, the great dragons hovered in the sky, following and escorting the caravan. The kobolds had never felt as safe as today, which excited their industrious spirits, morphing into beasts of burden, transporting back and forth, along with relocating the tribe's populace. They would settle in the forest within the giant dragon territory, which was their new homeland. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 22-21, Antagina Brown Voice Tube. Chapter 22, Chapter 21, Antagina Brown Voice Tube. The sun rose, heralding a new day. This once unnamed mountain range might have had travelers passing by who casually named it, but the giant dragons were unaware of this, and they did not care. They arrived here, and thus it became the Dragon Nest Mountain Range. Since the arrival of the giant dragons, this mountain range had long become a forbidden zone for all nearby creatures, even the birds in the sky dared not fly over it. But today it suddenly became very lively. The valleys where the juvenile dragon's nest was located had turned into a construction site. Black Dragon Rosani, White Dragon Gomot, and Kamid were expanding this now somewhat narrow valley, which reached nearly a kilometer high and several kilometers wide. Once expanded, it would become the exclusive dragon nest for the juvenile dragons within this giant dragon race. The three dragons only needed to open up one side of the cliff. They clung to the same side of the several hundred meters high cliff, their hard and sharp dragon claws digging deep into the stone wall, carving the stone wall into neatly shaped blocks. Large portions of rock kept falling from one side of the cliff to the ground. While the three dragons rested, many dogmen's beloved who had been waiting for a long time would push carts made from large logs cut from the forest, transporting these stone blocks to the settlement area in the forest outlined for the dogman tribe by Karon. These stones would be used to construct the dogman dwellings and low walls. Another group of kobolds used carts to transport refined gold and silver ores along with many gemstones into what was originally Karon's cave. Now, Karon's body felt cramped in this deep mountain cave. He only needed to remove the stone wall used as a screen, but he thought his cave was perfect as a treasure vault. His cave had been specially renovated by the Red Dragon. The high and spacious cave walls had been melted by the Red Dragon's flame into smooth, marble-like walls, and the flat ground was even firmer than that compacted by a steamroller, with melted crystals forming a smooth, glossy surface that could serve as a mirror. The stone wall originally serving as a screen could effectively block the view. Just install a door at the entrance of the cave, and it would become a relatively simple treasure vault. As for security, if the treasure trove surrounded by the dragon nest ever became insecure, it would mean the dragon group had lost its ability to resist. It must be said that the accumulated treasures by the Dogman tribe over countless years surpassed Karon's imagination. Due to time constraints, many treasures in the Dogman tribe's underground vault were not moved at the time. Now they were being transported one cart at a time into the treasure vault, piling up into small mountains in the vast deep cave. Kleena and Blue Dragon Das, tasked with protecting the relocation and transportation team of the Dogman tribe, watched the enormous treasure pass under their eyes, somewhat regretting not asking Karon for more treasures in the beginning. The greed of the giant dragon knew no bounds, but the two dragons merely pondered it in their minds, recalling the crippled Axie, and dared not think further. The forest was no longer silent as before. Nearly 1,000 kobolds were divided into 3 groups. Not only did they labor hard, but more than 300 remained to construct the tribe's future dwelling camp near the river bank. As the beloved of the dragon group, the once weak kobolds who could only dig cave communities underground now had the qualification to occupy a piece of land on the surface. The age-old giant trees of the forest were cut down one by one. The giant trees, averaging tens of meters in circumference and embraced by several people, appeared especially tough against the simple tools of the kobolds. Fortunately, one giant tree could be used to build several simple dwellings for the short-statured kobolds. Many strong Dogman warriors used roughly crafted iron and copper axes, along with quite a few stone axes, to cut the fallen giant trees into planks and cylinders, constructing one short wooden house after another under the leadership of the Dogman sorcerers and chiefs. Karon and Green Dragon Antagena squatted on the clearing cut out in the forest, watching the busy kobold camp, getting a sense of well-ordered territorial development. Green Dragon Antagena would choose to build a nest in the forest in the future. This was the natural preference of green dragons. Therefore, Karon planned to let Green Dragon Antagena supervise the kobold camp. But Green Dragon Antagena clearly did not understand why Karon valued the Dogman tribe so much. In the eyes of the giant dragons, the weak kobolds were actually dispensable beloved, with no strong combat power. The Dogman sorcerer's feeble strength could only tickle the giant dragons. Seduced by sloth, Antagena tilted her head to look at the distracted Karon, posing her question. Karon, why bother with these weak kobolds? Although they have excellent mining skills, dragons only need to collect regularly. There is no need to waste time and effort managing these weak kobolds. Although Karon was already the actual leader of the current dragon group, the young king of the giant dragon race, he did not deliberately put on a dignified air, acting as usual, so the juvenile dragons spoke frankly to him. Of course, Karon would not tell the truth to the green dragon, that he valued the kobolds because they could accumulate energy for him, and he needed to settle them quickly to make them truly submit to him to gain more power of thought. So, Karon thought for a moment, then crafted a reason and explained, the Dogman tribe is simply our first group of beloved. As the juvenile dragons grow over time, more beloved will be taken in the future. If we show our friendly attitude towards beloved from now on, it will be much easier to accept other beloved later, reducing unnecessary battles. Moreover, stable order will allow the beloved to create more wealth and profit for us. Look at those human nations, the more powerful and wealthy countries place more importance on stable order. Only when life and livelihood are guaranteed will members within the territory focus on creating wealth. In this way, the dragon group will become richer. Karon discreetly drew a grand vision beside the green dragon. Moreover, if weak humans can establish nations, why can't more powerful giant dragons have civilization, have their own empire? These beloved are our wealth, we should value them as we cherish our wealth. This grand vision obviously enticed the green dragon, Antagena's emerald pupils gleaming with green light as she gazed at the red dragon beside her, her tone growing enthusiastic. Do you have such distant goals, Karon? You're indeed the strongest and smartest giant dragon in the dragon group. Why not? The red dragon's tone turned enticing, waving his dragon claw at the land beneath and saying, look at the leaf-covered land at your feet, the most fertile humus soil, the most ideal for planting in the world, favored by the goddess of harvest. This will be the farmland that sustains the dragon group, and this farm is vast and boundless. And that climate pleasant, lush, and fertile grassland, teeming with countless running beasts, will be the pasture of the dragon group. This pasture, endless and boundless. We only need to take in more beloved to manage the territory, which will become the cradle of civilization, the cradle of wealth. The young female dragon Antagena inhaled deeply, engrossed in Karon's description of the future vision, completely ignoring the powerful monsters and tribes living around the dragon group territory, many of which even young dragon Carlet dared not provoke. Perhaps because time always stood with the giant dragons, Karon naturally ignored them too. Karon's words were not entirely empty, he did have such intentions, especially now that his enhanced energy sources were also tied to the submissiveness of beloved, which was also a motivating factor for him. Moreover, a green dragon who loves to manipulate hearts and is adept at implying might quietly spread his words within the dragon group, and the giant dragon race would gradually share the same goals and actions, greatly aiding the cohesion of the giant dragons, encouraging a more unified dragon group with shared objectives and demands, which was Karon's aim. Karon knew full well that only with solid foundations under his control, he could handle many unforeseeable surprises and dangers in the future. After all, fame is as risky for dragons as it is for fat pigs. Once he embarked on this path of seeking strength, it would inevitably be a journey of continuous conquest. Karon felt something and turned his head, his dragon eyes darting everywhere. Just moments ago, he felt the sensation of being watched, but after scanning around, he found nothing, so he shook his head, dismissing it. Such an experience in the forest was not surprising, perhaps just some animal passing by, curious enough to take a glance. If only Riven were here, she was an elf of the forest, with a larger sensory range than the still juvenile green dragon Antagena. Looking at the silent green dragon, Karon couldn't help but feel that it was livelier when Riven was around. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 23-22, Ogre Tribe. Chapter 23, Chapter 22, Ogre Tribe. During this period, the dragon group was very busy. The green jade dragon Antagena needed to supervise the construction of the kobold tribe settlements and separately allocate an area nearby for the future melting workshop. Apart from the valuable minerals, other practical minerals like iron, copper, and tin would be transported here for simple processing by the kobolds and then stored away. These minerals would later be made into armor and weapons to arm the dragon group's beloved force. However, the kobolds were only skilled in mining and roughly polishing gemstones into crude jewelry, lacking forging skills. They could roughly hammer iron ore into barely usable tools, so this plan could only be temporarily shelved. The lame blue dragon Axi was content to stay in the dragon nest licking his wounds, but for his lame leg to regrow, it might require a period of hibernation to complete. Fortunately, the juvenile dragons in the family had started to learn to shoulder the responsibility of maintaining the dragon group's territory. The united dragon group didn't worry about the giant dragon territory's safety. The canyon where the juvenile dragon's dragon nest is now twice the size before expansion, even adult giant dragons wouldn't find it cramped. The nominal dragon leader Carlet seemed like a recluse dragon. The juvenile dragons never saw her figure, even with some changes happening within the dragon group territory. Karon was initially concerned about how to deal with Carlet. In his mind, even though the blue dragon Carlet is indifferent, she wouldn't easily give up her leader position and let the dragon cubs crawl over her head, who once played with her tail like a toy. If he offered the blue dragon's share of the treasure, perhaps the greed-driven blue dragon would then demand all the treasure to be handed over by the dragon group, which the other giant dragons wouldn't like. With Karon's support, a battle would erupt, but Karon didn't wish for the dragon group to waste away in pointless infighting. In his eyes, every giant dragon's power was useful. However, if a direct challenge was raised according to dragon group's rules, even with Karon's enhanced talent, he still wasn't confident about successfully challenging Carlet, as a young dragon's power is far stronger than that of the current red dragon. The current state fits the red dragon's wishes. It seems that as long as food is provided daily, Carlet could stay in the cave, perhaps even sleep until adulthood. Karon stretched luxuriously. One cannot deny the joy of sleeping on piles of gold made dragons happy. Last night he even had a beautiful dream, where the newly expanded cave didn't feel narrow at all but made Karon feel somewhat stifled. He planned to make do for now and establish a new nest on the mountaintop when he entered the next hibernation stage upon crossing his age. Before Karon could exit the cave, he heard Riven shouting outside. He leisurely walked out of the cave, seeing Riven riding on the back of the gold-eating beast, laughing like riding a big cat. A long rope was tied around the gold-eating beast's neck, the other end held by dogman warriors guarding the cave. Upon seeing the red dragon's figure, the two dogman warriors hurriedly knelt, their canine heads bowed, and uttered in dog-like dragon language, "Great Master." Karon nodded, looking towards the lively pink little elf. It had been a long time since he last saw little elf Riven, who seemed to have grown a bit taller, wearing a green flower fairy dress. The acorn hat on her head was replaced by a flower crown woven with tender green leaves. 2 flowers still adorned each side of her pale green hair. Only then did Karon realize there was a power of thought connection between little elf Riven and himself. However, their connection was too weak and intermittent, which explained why Karon hadn't noticed it before. At this time, Riven also noticed Karon. She tugged her ride, the big cat, and ran over to him, stopping in front of Karon. The rebellious big cat lay down submissively, while Riven flew up and hovered in front of Karon's smiling face, raising her delicate little face and giggling at Karon. "Long time no see, Karon. Not only did I bring you a gift, but I also have good news. The merchants have arrived with big ships." Located about 200 to 300 miles east of the Dragon Nest mountain range, close to the sea, lies a prosperous gulf. It is covered by sprawling rainforests, abundant in species resources. The rainforest offers endless hunting of beasts, while the sea yields unlimited fish catches. Any grain scattered here can ripen 4 times a year, rich enough to tempt any nation. Additionally, there's a natural harbor here, although far from many civilized places. Travelers always pass through, and merchants specifically come, docking their ships. Adventurers even land here, and many large airships loaded with supplies from across the sea for trading with the Beastman Empire make stops here on their return voyage. These travelers and merchants bring ample food and various living materials to the ogre tribe occupying this rich gulf. The ogre tribe need only to trade their useless shining minerals and glittering junk to merchants for cheap cloth and crudely made weapons, various leftover inferior spices, and expired old grain among other abundant materials. This rapid strength growth allowed the originally chaotic and disordered tribe, occupying only a small area for survival with a few hundred people, to transform into the lord tribe of countless powerful ogre warriors. All this was because a mysterious ogre giant demon emerged from this tribe. This creature, a legend in the dirty, chaotic, unintelligent, ugly ogre species, is the world's most beautiful being, possessing unparalleled appearance, wisdom, and power. It is destined from birth to rule over all ogres. At this moment, bringing order and wisdom to the ogre tribe, the giant demon laid lazily on a massive couch inside a tall tent in the tribe's center. Its right hand gently supported its naturally alluring face. The bead-colored long dress couldn't conceal the ups and downs of its silhouette. 2 white handfuls surged from its chest, and graceful leg lines and bare feet exposed outside the long dress sparkled with a kind of luminous luster, as if the skin's jade color was enveloped by a layer of luminescence, making them like round, smooth pearls. This was undoubtedly the most adored Holy Spirit creation by the gods, carrying a more deadly allure than a succubus. The giant demon's 4-meter-long body didn't detract from its beauty, and even the most critical human sculptors couldn't find a flaw on the giant demon, emblematic of charm and perfection. Standing apart from the giant demon, however, were the contrasting ogre leader and ogre mage. The one-eyed ogre king Moergo, naturally possessing ancestral mountain giant blood, had an ugly face towering over 6 meters when standing straight, with one arm as thick as the tent's supporting wooden pole. His naked upper body was full of scars, burly muscles knotted up, emitting a foul odor, signifying blatant violence and filth. It's noteworthy that ogres and dragons share a commonality: the larger the body, the greater the strength. Yet a dragon's length includes its tail, and accounting for this, even young dragon Carlet's power couldn't compare to this one-eyed ogre king. Although the ogre mage stood only 3 meters tall, the two-headed ogre naturally excelled as powerful casters among the ogre species. Capable of learning human magic and awakening their own witchcraft, the ogre mage with 2 small horns on its weathered and aged faces showed its bloodlust and formidable spell-casting abilities with a long string of skulls hung around its neck. Now, the ogre warriors over 3 meters tall, considered mighty by other beings, kneel humbly in the tent's center, reporting their observations to the tribe's highest power holder. We've figured out by utilizing the banshee slaves given by Great Witch Sahai that, some years ago, 2 blue dragons flew to nearby mountains near the elf wasteland and nested there. They've even bred the next generation of juvenile dragons, and those giant dragons have started recruiting beloved. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 24-23, Approaching Crisis. Chapter 24, Chapter 23, Approaching Crisis. So, the new giant dragons have already started to become restless. We might as well eliminate them while they're still young dragons, or capture them as slaves. The one-eyed ogre king Moergo wore a sinister smile on his grotesque face, his muscles twitching unconsciously on arms as thick as logs, showcasing immense physical strength. The two-headed ogre mage Sahai turned his aged face towards the giant demon Fafnir, who was reclining on the couch with half-closed eyes. Fafnir made no indication, but a faint, misty light shone in his eyes, resembling the ominous glow of a slithering snake spirit. Then he rasped as he spoke, "Moergo is right. We can easily deal with those young giant dragons now. But if we wait until they mature and gather more beloveds, they will begin to expand the dragon group's territory on their own. At that time, trying to deal with them will cost the lives of many powerful ogre warriors." Although the ogre tribe is truly led by King Moergo, who commands all the warriors, the two-headed great wizard, representing the ogre's faith and shamanic power, holds significant sway. However, what often affects the final decision the most is the wisdom and rationality of the giant demon Fafnir. This isn't the ogre advocating some sort of separation of powers. In a primitive tribe that has the glimpses of civilization, the authority they hold also represents the power each possesses. Without power of their own, even if you are a divine spirit incarnate, you will be trampled underfoot by the ogres who equally revere strength. Then let's proceed that way. Just in time, those greedy merchants have arrived. These merchants from the mighty Gata Empire should be more than happy to take this batch of premium goods. Let them not fool us again with poor quality fabric, ragged weapons and armor, and seeds that won't sprout. They must provide genuine good things. I heard there are actually 2 strong red dragon juveniles in that giant dragon race. Perhaps it would be worth using one of my talent slots on them. I'm kind of looking forward to it. The languorous giant demon Fafnir parted his pink, moist lips, surprisingly emitting a girlish, crisp voice beneath such an enticingly alluring appearance. Great Witch Sahai, you handle the negotiations with those insatiably greedy merchants. Once the agreement is in place, we can deal with that young giant dragon race. A hint of weariness flickered on the resplendent face. Giant demon Fafnir yawned slowly, curling her 10 jade-like toes, then waved her hand. That's it then. I need to take a nap first. A guttural sound resonated, and the one-eyed ogre king looked at the magnificent curves of the reclined figure on the long couch, swallowing a mouthful of saliva discreetly. A substantial bulge formed beneath the fabric wrapped like a long dress. The pretentiously napping giant demon didn't respond, while the great wizard Sahai's 4 eyes all darted over. Moergo quickly rubbed his head with his massive hand, feigning a naive smile, and slipped out of the tent. Outside the tent, ogre warriors wielding crude weapons were everywhere. The stronger elite warriors adorned some tattered leather armor, while those of higher status bear rusty iron armor. These robust ogre warriors average over 3 meters in height. They wandered in and out of the tribal camp, some having returned from hunting in the rainforest, dragging along dead wild boars, mountain deer, and other formidable beasts. Some warriors returned with slaves, capturing races like goblins, centaurs, and lizardmen. Evidently, this tribe continually expands, unsatisfied with the already plentiful and vast gulf they occupy. The towering body of the one-eyed ogre Moergo stood out even among the masses of ogre warriors. He stopped several ogres leading captured centaur warriors, then yanked a bound centaur warrior over. With a robust arm firmly pinning it, a smile crossed his grotesque face as he unabashedly lifted the thin fabric surrounding himself, ignoring the helpless cries of the female centaur. Seems what was said to Green Dragon Antagena last time worked, as the other juvenile dragons, clearly enticed by the narrative embellished by Antagena, have been eagerly associating with Karon recently, inquiring about when the Red Dragon will lead them to expand territory. It can only be said that dragons naturally possess a strong desire to conquer, regardless of age. Moreover, seeing the Dogman tribe's reverence towards Karon as a deity, never defying the Red Dragon's orders, these juvenile dragons, who originally didn't plan to recruit beloveds now, also became envious, eager to recruit their own beloveds and enjoy the status of being worshipped and esteemed. Karon barely managed to exchange a few words with the long-missed little elf before the other juvenile dragons nonchalantly ambled over, pretending to wander, each dragon head pushing forward, eyes fixed intently on the Red Dragon, startling Riven to quickly hide behind the Red Dragon, peeking at the approaching juveniles with just her small head tilted. Karon had no choice but to squat and seating the juvenile dragons in place. Lately, Karon has been busy studying that mysterious rune in his mind. As the Dogman tribe gradually settled down, he noticed the power of thought he absorbed visibly increased, surmising that this power of thought likely grew stronger as his influence on others deepened. The other party acknowledges him in some way mentally, allowing him to absorb the power of thought from them. As this acknowledgement deepens, the more power of thought he can absorb from them. Perhaps bringing destruction and pain to others can also be effective, and the occasional backlash from the evil dragon blood often leads Karon to such thoughts. But clearly, this method is not very cost-effective compared to conquest and governance, which offer enduring sources. Through this period of absorption, the energy accumulated in the vortex in his mind has gained a certain mass. He plans to conduct an experiment first, to see if that mysterious rune can be actively influenced and strengthened by his consciousness, as he speculated. Although this energy is certainly not enough to make a massive change, if his hypothesis is correct, it will be sufficient for a minor enhancement, proving his conjectured usage is correct. This way, he will inevitably enter a period of short-term slumber. While he originally planned to proceed steadily, the historical lesson of hurried expansion is deeply engraved in his mind, and the dragon group's strength is still not powerful enough. Now that he has found a way to steadily grow strong, he cannot be too anxious. But he also didn't want to dampen the enthusiasm of these juvenile dragons, so he came up with a compromise. Because Dogman's beloved has stabilized, next Kamit and Gomot will choose some of the stronger warriors within the Dogman tribe and have them pick up weapons for some training. At least they need to know how to follow orders, advance and retreat rather than just scattering everywhere. Karon looked at the seated white dragon brothers, assigning them tasks. Compared to other juvenile dragons, the somewhat honest and reliable Kamit and the somewhat sly and lazy Gomot are perfect complements. The two white dragons nodded, although it was different from their expectations, they knew Karen's arrangements must have their reasons. Antagena, you will be responsible for exploring the tribes within the Dragon Group territory's forest that can be subdued. Rosani, you will go along with Antagena. You can travel along the river upstream and downstream to assess the situation while supporting each other. The Green Dragon and Black Dragon also nodded, showing some excitement, suggesting Karon was ready to take action. Kleena, since you are prone to impulsiveness, you will go together with Das. You two will be responsible for the direction of the prairie. Once all situations are investigated clearly, compile the findings so that Das can decide whether or not to launch an attack with the Dragon Group and Beloved. Karon made arrangements. This plan matched his intentions to first handle internal matters within the existing territory, establishing a stable rear base. Then what about you, Karon? Hearing that the decision-making power was given to Das, the surprised Kleena and Blue Dragon Das asked simultaneously, exchanging glances. I will enter a period of slumber, explained the Red Dragon quietly, as exploring the mysterious rune in his mind is currently his top priority. Then I'll guard your slumber, Kleena reluctantly proposed, clearly unwilling to follow Das's command. Karon cast a stern glance at her. Here we have Axie and Carlette, making it safer than with you. And remember, never lose your life due to pointless pride and dignity. If there's danger, quickly return to the dragon nest. Karon advised with some concern. Numerous juvenile dragons thoughtfully nodded and replied quietly. Kleena trembled and looked down following Karon's gaze, muttering, well, I hope Das is smart enough. Hiding behind, Riven, seeing Karon finish discussing matters, promptly stepped forward to create a lively atmosphere, raised her little hand and called out, what about me, Karon? I can be really useful too. Karon turned his head and blew away the flower crown on the noisy little elf's head in one breath, casting a sidelong glance at Riven who was momentarily busy. Riven, are you contemplating betraying your own race? This is the behavior of a traitor. Pick elves don't mind who rules them as long as they aren't disturbed in seeking happiness, Riven huffed, placing the flower crown back on her head and punching the red dragon's sturdy scales, only to cry out in pain, you're driving me crazy, Karon, your skin is too thick. Karon scratched his chin with his dragon claw, oh, I see. Then Riven, you can be my intelligence officer since you're familiar with the forest. Remember to assist Das and the others. Riven, voluntarily offering to serve, received the answer she wanted. Her cheeks puffed with anger turned bright in an instant as she jumped up on the red dragon's back, shouting, yay! Source, webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 25-24, Danger Approaches. Chapter 25, Chapter 24, Danger Approaches. After devouring 2 plump mountain deer meticulously selected by Riven, Karon nestled into his cave and drifted into slumber. The golden gems painstakingly piled up by the kobolds scattered everywhere as he sprawled amidst the shimmering treasures, his radiant scales reflecting the treasure's brilliance. And Karon's consciousness, in the state between dreaming and waking, began to consciously suggest to himself, hypnotizing himself to influence his subconscious, thereby affecting the energy produced by the mysterious runes, the heart energy vortex, as Karon temporarily named this magical energy. Initially, it was indeed difficult. In the state between dreaming and waking, his consciousness couldn't effectively generate a logical thought, much like many dreamers who aren't even aware of being within a dream themselves, let alone maintaining a clear consciousness to formulate a logical thought. Occasionally, as soon as his conscious thought was about to spring forth, it suddenly transformed into another thought, just like the incessant scene changes in dreams. But through his continuous attempts, he began to grasp those fleeting moments of consciousness clarity, gradually prolonging the duration of conscious awareness. When he first succeeded in maintaining clarity until forming a complete and logical thought, he suddenly sensed a part of his consciousness high above, gazing indifferently upon everything within the space where the heart energy vortex resided, connected mysteriously with the runes hidden within. In that moment, Karon realized it is the fundamental consciousness presence of all living beings, the true essence and the initial spirit, with the space encompassing the heart energy vortex as the ocean of his subconscious, and the vortex as the eye within that ocean. This marked his first time proactively observing the state of this space, rather than being passively aware only during deep sleep. Linked to his initial true consciousness, Karon suddenly felt as though his consciousness possessed a tangible view, with the vision before him rapidly expanding. He saw the evil dragon blood coursing through his body, like mountain rock barriers, from small to large. The field of view continuously expanded, his red body quietly lying in the cave adorned with gold ingots, gemstones, and various rare minerals. At the cave entrance, the gold-eating beast was lazily curled up, yawning, its furry paws meticulously wiping its face. In addition, he saw with remarkable clarity various magic elements unseen to the naked eye, their particle fluctuations unknown, vibrant and colorful, challenging to capture through depiction. Karon even felt as if he could extend a paw to touch these elements. This sensation resembled deep meditation among mages, or closer to the deist perception of observing and comprehending heaven and earth. However, such a state consumed much spirit, and Karon voluntarily disengaged after a few minutes. This is the origin point of creatures' perception ability, granting all living beings the power of perception, with the potent perception stemming from an individual's true essence and powerful soul. Estimating roughly, his current perception range circles a radius of about 100 meters around him, although thick mountain walls and rocks obstruct his perception, expanding significantly in open spaces. Joyful thoughts stirred within his sea of consciousness, as he settled into true sleep, ready to attempt harnessing the heart energy vortex for a self-experimental enhancement once his spirit recovered. Roar! Blue Dragon Das raised its head, mimicking Karon's command for the dragon group to encircle, as juvenile dragons perched on the thick tree boughs, glaring at the panicked green goblins screeching amidst their forest camp. The Green Goblin tribe's leader, a robust variant Earth Goblin, attempted to lead the tribe to charge into a fleeing burrow, yet, lacking courage, few goblins followed. Barely a few steps out, he was pinned down by a barrage of wooden spears, tied with iron pieces, shot by the encircling dogman warriors. The tumult and chaos of the goblin camp were swiftly subdued by the dogman warriors, the rows of skewered bodies rendering the noisy goblins orderly and subdued, trembling upon the ground. But at this time, the juvenile dragons began shifting blame amongst themselves, with even Green Dragon Antagena, eager to acquire new beloveds, unwilling to accept these filthy, stinking green-skinned dwarves, let alone the proud Red Dragon Kleena, who wanted the dogman warriors to eliminate the greenskins and bury them in the dragon group's orchard for fertilizer. Finally, it was Blue Dragon Das who made up his mind. Having learned a bit of the art of shirking responsibility from Red Dragon, he called over the dogman leader and instructed, "Bag, you'll temporarily be responsible for managing these green goblins. Make sure they don't cause trouble. They should learn to have order like you dogmen. As for the rest, we'll decide when Karon wakes up." "All right, Master Das." The dogman leader Bag, who casually received his name from Karon, bowed humbly. "Then let's take our spoils back. As per Karon's instructions, you dogmen will also have a portion of the spoils. Go back and rest well, the next battle will come soon. We need to sweep away all tribes that don't belong to the dragon groups beloved within the territory before Karon awakens," instructed Blue Dragon. After speaking, the Blue Dragon soared into the sky with the proud juvenile dragons, returning to the nest. The spirited juvenile dragons were unaware of the hidden danger approaching. Powerful enemies from afar were already on their way. The mighty ogre tribe from the bountiful gulf was advancing through the towering jungles that seemed to obscure the sky, heading towards the Dragon Nest mountain range. Enslaved by the ogre mage, the banshee quietly flew ahead, scouting the way and pointing out directions. At the forefront walked the tall ogre tyrant Moergo, brazenly striding ahead, accompanied by two strong ogre warriors carrying his weapon. It was a heavy, undecorated long axe with a blunt edge that didn't seem very sharp, but the ogre tyrant's strength was the best blade for this unadorned axe. The ancient two-headed wizard accompanied by all the tribe's wizards walked beside the giant demon's litter, raised by 4 ferocious bear goblin slaves, in the middle of the 100-strong ogre procession. The heavily protected giant demon Fafnir reclined on the litter, propped up by his right hand on his cheek, with the tiny forest beldam standing on his outstretched left hand. This was the future master of the beldams enslaved by the ogre tribe. At this stage, the banshee couldn't fully master her powers, and the sound she unconsciously emitted affected the spirits of other creatures. When using her talent ability fully, she could easily control powerful warriors among humans. But at this moment, the banshee singing melodious songs was being used as a toy by the giant demon. Her voice filled with allure and manipulation was treated as music, completely isolated in the small space of the litter. The other ogres could only see the banshee's lip movements without hearing any sound. Following the ogre procession was a small group of humans, surprisingly bold merchants. Merchant Orsus was unlike those occasionally coming to chance their luck or venture to explore new business opportunities, being from a family of financial officials in the Gata Empire, with robust backing, often traveling between the Empire and the Beastman Kingdom across the sea. Even in the Beastman Kingdom, he has deep connections, evident from the 2 powerful Beastman warriors surrounding him. They were descendants of ancient Beastmen, reserve warriors of the Beastman royal family's guard army, Beastman warriors. The other 10 human warriors of the small team were also wearing exquisite leather armor and sharp weapons, emanating a cold and fierce aura honed between life and death. Among them was even a mage with quite high status within human society. Initially, Orsus planned to habitually use leftover materials and some unwanted inventory from trade with the Beastman Kingdom to earn a profit within the ogre tribe and leave. However, upon hearing the ogre mage speak about the tribe's intention to conquer a young dragon group and sell those juvenile dragons to him, he couldn't help but feel greatly tempted, and unexpectedly took a risk, bringing his guards along. Orsus couldn't help but admire his foresight. Initially, when he led the family's merchant fleet here, he discovered the giant demon banshee, which was so beautiful it didn't seem earthly, immediately astonishing him as if a heavenly being. He even considered capturing the giant demon and presenting it to a bigwig in the empire, ensuring he would gain favor and perhaps step into a governmental career, instead of just being a member of the financial official family. But this unique giant demon not only possessed mysterious and powerful spiritual abilities, but the ogre tribe also had rare atavist ogre tyrants and strong wizards. Accomplishing this on his own was unlikely, not to mention it was too far away, and as a businessman, long-term and sustained benefits were factors he needed to consider. Thus, he abandoned his plan, thinking perhaps nurturing a controllable trader suited his interests better. Now, the time had come for his foresight to pay off. Mysterious dragons, as an upper species of the Icaria world, were almost everyone's dream partners and contract objects. If he could bring back these juvenile dragons, those noble mage masters and empire bigwigs would flock to him, and he would become hotly sought after, ending his ordinary days soon. He wouldn't need to rely on borrowed power but truly become one of the nobility. Thinking of this, Orsus's eyes grew eager. Perhaps he could even leave a dragon for himself, sealing a contract with a juvenile dragon, ensuring his newly founded family would have strong protection and backing. He wouldn't worry about holding onto this juvenile dragon, as he would bring back several. Orsus gazed at the descending twilight. Surprisingly, he hadn't noticed how beautiful this barren land was. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 26-25, Dragon Catcher. Chapter 26, Chapter 25, Dragon Catcher. Night had fallen, and the mountain range where the dragon nest was located transformed into a deep silence. Even on nights when the dragon group entered sleep, this place was a domain that all other creatures dared not set foot, except for a few elite kobold warriors guarding the wide canyon exit, tasked with protecting the guardian giant dragon. The deep night enveloped the landscape. There was no light in the canyon, not even a torch. Clearly, the dragon group did not share the habits of the civilized world, but these things were unnecessary for the giant dragons anyway. Fortunately, kobolds are accustomed to living in dark caves, and these warriors, carefully chosen by Dogman leader Bag to guard the true dragons, also possess the ability to see in darkness. The gold-eating beast lay on the ground in exhaustion, resting. Unlike the kobold warriors who could rotate shifts, it had to guard the entrance with the kobolds day and night, with only short times of eating and excretion being its free moments. But beasts, after all, possess more sensitive perception than kobolds. The dozing gold-eating beast suddenly lifted its head as if it sensed a dangerous aura. However, before it could distinguish the source of the danger, a few long spears whistled out from the darkness, piercing the unsuspecting kobold warriors, whose small bodies almost split in half from the force, falling silent in the dark. Pupils that emitted faint light in the darkness emerged from the deep woods, and strong ogre warriors rapidly approached, lighting torches. Flames appeared on the cliffs on both sides of the canyon, surrounding the dragon nest completely. The gold-eating beast whimpered, tucking its tail ready to flee, only to be lightly picked up by the nape by two fingers of ogre tyrant Moergo, instantly rendering it limp and motionless. "Oh, a little kitty, give it to Fafnir as a toy." Moergo handed the little cat to a nearby ogre, his gaze turning to the two-headed wizard releasing spells with the tribe's wizards to ban the giant dragon's flight. Great Witch Sahai and the other wizards waved their scepters while chanting. The shamanic magic power surged in the air, resonating with their bloodline, creating a domain of invisible force gradually covering the entire canyon dragon nest. The domain's fluctuation and other movement sounds startled the sleeping juvenile dragons. The temperamental female red dragon Kleena poked her head out of her cave, angrily reprimanding, "You damned kobolds, what are you?" Grr! Her warning roar to the dragon group interrupted as she quickly assessed the situation. The juvenile dragons, initially thinking it was noise made by kobolds or other giant dragons, immediately emerged from their caves upon hearing Kleena's warning. "Damn, where did so many ogres come from? Are they surrounding the dragon nest to start a war with us?" The juvenile dragons were astonished, roaring in high tones, wanting to fly out and gather together. However, they found that the magic power they relied on to gently flap their wings and lift their bodies was no longer under their control. The juvenile dragons could only awkwardly control their wings, gliding out of their nests onto the ground. This wasn't due to the power of those ogre warlocks being able to seal off the vast space, but disordering the originally ordered magic power into chaotic waves, preventing the juvenile dragons from easily controlling magic as usual. Benefiting from Karon's training, the grounded juvenile dragons naturally gathered back to back, spreading their wings to intimidate the advancing ogres. "Ha ha ha, surrender, you weak dragonlings!" Ogre Moergo's towering figure stepped forward, the giant axe in his hand scraping the ground, sparking everywhere, dismissively standing before the juvenile dragon. Despite not being slim, it looked particularly slender compared to his 6-meter sturdy body. "I wouldn't want to shatter your precious bodies with my big axe. They could fetch a good price. Obey King Moergo's words, and I'll treat you gently." Impulsive Moergo usually wouldn't be so lenient, but ogre giantess Fafnir took a fancy to the larger female red dragon Kleena among these juvenile dragons, so Moergo refrained from rushing to use force. "What should we do? Perhaps we should unite and charge out in one direction, maybe escape." The restless white dragon Gomot paced impatiently. Kleena blew 2 sparks from her nostrils. "Karon is still asleep, he hasn't awakened. If we flee immediately, what about him?" Blue Dragon Das sighed heavily, assessing the enemy's strength, faint sparks of lightning dancing on his body. He spoke in a deep voice, "Find a chance to wake Karon. There's no way we can break through with just us few. We can't fly flexibly now, launching into the air makes us easy targets. Axie and Carlet should have heard our warning, we'll act when the chance arises." Blue Dragon Axie heard the dragon group's roars but didn't rashly charge over, instead sailing from high above, avoiding the domain that gave him an odd feeling. With all attention from the ogre warriors focused on the canyon, he silently glided down from the sky. Before the alarmed ogre warriors could raise their long spears, Axi shredded their bodies with his dragon claws, simultaneously releasing a lightning dragon breath. The swift chain lightning instantly charred several ogres, tumbling them down the cliff. Though the other ogres threw their long spears, the agile Axi easily dodged the weapons. Occasionally, a fortunate spear flying close was effortlessly swiped down by the giant dragon. As the ruler of the skies, when unrestrained by flying ability, ordinary ogre warriors were no match for these giant dragons. The blue dragon leader Carlet behaved likewise. She did not easily approach the canyon, instead clearing ordinary ogre warriors along the canyon flanks with Axi. Her two claws grasped two ogre spines, hurling them from the high air to the ground, becoming mush. Yelling loudly, she declared, "You inferior ogres, how dare you offend my dragon group? Withdraw now, or face the wrath of the giant dragons." The juvenile dragons watched the two dragons display their might, momentarily agitated, ready to swarm forward. Suddenly, they saw a figure of unparalleled beauty stand up from behind the ogre warriors, a tall human, her jade-like arms raised high, unleashing a wave akin to dragon power that instantly spread. Descending Axi felt his mind suddenly slapped by adult giant dragon's claws, screaming in agony, his body losing control, crashing to the ground. The weakened blue dragon was quickly tied up by ascending ogres, ropes threading through his wings. While turning, Carlet witnessed Axi's sudden fall, squawked sharply, flapping her wings frantically, trying to escape. But, grinning Moergo seized the chance, hurling his long axe with all strength, slicing through the air with a sharp whistling, matching the speed of Blue Dragon's breath, swiftly cleaving off a portion of Carlet's wing. The tremendous mental wave simultaneously struck Blue Dragon Carlet's mind, causing her to emit a thunderous mournful cry, helplessly crashing to the ground. The canyon fell silent, juvenile dragons displaying panic and fear. Even mighty giant dragons were no different from ordinary humans before a superior force. Moergo impatiently squeezed his fist, advancing. The dragon group's two strongest dragons were captured. He no longer planned to offer these unruly juvenile dragons any chance, intending to teach them a lesson, showing them the ogre tyrant was not the inferior race in dragon mouths. Should we surrender? Even the most timid white dragon Gomot struggled with these words, as pride and innate giant dragon refusal to yield urged them to fight, yet clear disparity in power cautioned them to retreat. The juvenile dragons were at a loss, even the usually calm blue dragon Doss's mind felt muddled. With the strongest Carlet fallen, what could these juvenile dragons possibly do? Karon, suddenly Kleena glared and shouted, finally drawing movement from the long silent cave. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 27-26, All's Fair in War. Chapter 27, Chapter 26, All's Fair in War. We surrender, but I have one condition. The voice, youthful yet unusually deep, came through as the awakened red dragon slowly stepped out of the dark cave. The uneasy juvenile dragons immediately seemed to have found their anchor, huddling towards Karon on the right side. Karon softly spoke to the juvenile dragons in dragon language, seemingly comforting them, and their confused hearts quickly settled down. Under the illumination of the blazing fire, in the eyes of many ogres and humans, the red dragon appearing before them had a robust and strong body. The muscles bulging from its chest and belly and the powerful leg muscles indicated the formidable power this giant dragon possessed. Compared to him, the similarly aged juvenile dragons were simply from a different era. The near 8-meter-long body was covered in red and gold shimmering scales that gleamed brilliantly under the firelight. Its broad leathery wings were covered in mysterious, intricate patterns. Its head, unlike other red dragons, had no bat-like wings at its neck and ears. Instead, the simple lines outlined by its head formed smooth angles that even the world's greatest sculptors could not achieve, resembling a perfect fusion of golden dragon and red dragon. The pair of trident dragon horns on its head were menacing and sturdy. This was a powerful and perfect creature. If the ogre giantess Fafnir represented beauty, then this giant dragon was a work of art of strength. "Oh, I must have it, it is such a perfect piece of art. The human world would go mad fighting over it. The merchant Orsus' breath became unusually rapid, his blood boiling. After receiving confirmation from the mage beside him, he began to tremble excitedly. It's just a juvenile dragon, my god, could it be the descendant of the legendary dragon god? I would pay any price to acquire it. Moreover, it seemed to be the leader of the group of juvenile dragons. Orsus observed how the juvenile dragons calmed down after the red dragon appeared, clearly indicating its high status and prestige among them. A bold idea surged up inside him, he would give everything to keep this red dragon. As long as he could bond this red dragon to his side, no matter who else held the other juvenile dragons, they would all listen to him in the future. Always appearing particularly calm and lazy, giant demon Fafnir had already stepped forward. The mysterious giant demon was a rare female ogre variant. She was the resurrected bloodline of the ancient demigod sea demon ancestor, the soul devourer, three-headed sea demon Dicolites, possessing naturally powerful spiritual force and an extremely formidable talent. Fafnir's bloodline endowed her with the soul-devouring talent like her ancient ancestor. Although not as powerful as the ancient demigod sea demons, the talent born from the ancient sea demons' three heads, symbolizing birth, growth, and mortality, allowed her to devour and accommodate the souls of three designated objects with her own spiritual soul power. Once she devours the opponent's soul, her soul forms a main and auxiliary symbiotic relationship with the opponent's soul, like another growing head. As the opponent becomes stronger, so does she. Her strength would in turn nourish the opponent. If the opponent was weak, it was hard to affect her own power. Yet, if she died, the opponent's life would also perish. Only when the opponent fell into the silence of death would it cause her pain, as the lost soul would be extremely difficult to eradicate, and her own talent would also fade with the opponent's death. Currently, she was still only in the juvenile stage, able to designate only one candidate as the object for her talent's assimilation. She hadn't yet reached her peak of growth, let alone reaching the later stage comparable to a giant dragon's ancient phase to use the last talent slot. Thus, she was extremely cautious in utilizing her talent. Even Moergo, possessing the giant ancestor bloodline in the ogre tribe, did not gain her favor. In her eyes, even without his foolish mind, Moergo's strength growth had a ceiling. Although he had grown to his peak, it was far from capable of bearing her talent. She also knew Moergo had long coveted her. Originally, Fafnir favored that female red dragon. Not only was the red dragon female, but its growth potential far exceeded Moergo's giant ancestor bloodline. Even a true giant wouldn't hold an advantage over the red dragon. But the moment she saw Karon, she didn't have to make a choice. Her talent was fervently crying out, longing for it. The red dragon before her was the best bearer for her talent. Even ancient demigod sea demon Dicolites wouldn't refuse such a talented dragon. Moergo still roared angrily in the scene, "What qualifications do you have to negotiate conditions with us, with your few weak juvenile dragons?" The 6-meter-tall ogre tyrant looked down at the quietly composed Karon. With its tail included, the giant dragon was only 8 meters long. Standing on all fours, it didn't appear as towering as the ogres. Yet, its gaze calmly overlooked Moergo blocking the front, gazing into the eyes of the giant demon and wizards among the ogres, clearly demonstrating that it wasn't completely oblivious while inside the cave. "Moergo, listen to his conditions." Fafnir stepped down from the long couch, her tender, bare feet touching the rough ground. The two-headed great wizard also paused, supporting the giant demon's view. The situation was now entirely under their control. As long as these juvenile dragons weren't foolish, they wouldn't rashly take to the skies to escape. At close range, no dragon could escape the ogre warrior's spear volleys. Karon walked slowly towards the giant demon, bypassing the silently seething Moergo, saying, "We could genuinely submit, but we demand relatively equal status and some freedom, not to let the dragon endure humiliation. In return, the dragons will voluntarily sign a contract with you, submitting to your command. Karon didn't propose this condition out of arrogance. It was widely acknowledged that killing a dragon was the least efficient way to utilize them. In the eyes of the ogres, these juvenile dragons equally feared death descending upon them. "Stop there, dragon, at this distance." Ogre Mage Sahai halted the dragon's movement. Even though Karon used negotiation as a tactic to placate the ogres, this aged, crafty ogre wizard still appeared very cautious, stopping Karon about 10 meters from them. "I accept your condition," Fafnir almost agreed verbally without a second thought after hearing the condition. The condition wasn't harsh, almost too simple. If the red dragon was willing to cooperate, then the process of assimilating the soul with her talent herb was far smoother. Orsis also nodded. The giant demon's action was wise. He should currently steady these juvenile dragons temporarily. The cunning human intellect let him envision 1,000 ways to renege later. As long as the dragons fell into his hands, he could dispose of them at will. Very well, then next. The red dragon slowly lowered its head, a gesture of submission from a dragon. Taking a deep breath, as if burdened by the words of submission it was about to speak to its opponents. The ogres were poised arrogantly to accept the dragon's submission. Even the cautious two-headed ogre mage felt a sense of euphoria. This represented the embodiment of strength and nobility, a dragon. Although the old wizard regretted not having the dragon's head as a trophy, he would soon be able to carve the dragon's image on his scepter, symbolizing his conquest. This idea occurred in a split second, when suddenly, a thought flashed in the mind of the mage standing hidden behind the ogres beside Orsis. His magic staff began to emit a glow of magical light as he shouted out, "No, careful, this damn dragon!" Those seasoned warriors instinctively raised their shields, moving to block Orsis. Before the mage could finish his words, at that moment, the red dragon, which had its head lowered, suddenly lifted its head. Its eyes, like two bright rubies, emanated terrifying anger and murderous intent. The unfinished sentence echoed through the canyon, "Face my wrath, you damned scum!" Whoosh, the boiling flames transformed into a violent, surging cone-shaped breath, spewing from the dragon's mouth. Several unprepared ogre warriors instantly turned into fireballs, their screams yet to even sound. Its far stronger hind legs had already tensed, the omnipresent magical power in the air surged, effortlessly lifting the dragon's body, tearing apart the ogres blocking its way, and pouncing towards the wizards. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 28-27, Overload. Chapter 28, Chapter 27, Overload. The distance of 10 meters was just a blink of an eye for Karon at this moment, allowing him to easily close in. The powerful presence of the giant dragon caused panic even among the ogre mages who frequently accompanied their tribe in conquering other opponents. Despite this, the battle-hardened ogre mages instinctively raised their magic staffs, trying to wield the shamanic magic power within their bodies to protect themselves. But the next moment, the hell of heat and flames descended upon them. This was the red dragon's innate domain called Ashen Domain. The coverage of the Ashen Domain wasn't extensive, but the suffocating magma aura within its range affected the breathing of all creatures. The ordinary ogre warriors found it difficult to breathe, and even the air within the fiery domain was scorching. They attempted to hold their breath and raise their weapons to stab at the charging red dragon. However, the once solid and reliable earth no longer supported their heavy bodies. The ground began to deform, either collapsing or protruding, causing the obstructed warriors to stumble and fall onto the ground after only a few steps. The high temperatures quickly ignited their bodies, wrapping their weapons in flames. The seemingly unburnable trait not only ignited the magic in the air, but also caused the magic within these mages' bodies to boil, like boiling water scurrying restlessly inside the bodies of the ogres. These mages were unable to control their magic and bodies, one by one collapsing helplessly within the red dragon's innate domain, becoming fuel for the flames burning brightly. Those ogre mages barely able to resist the rebellion of their own magic were swiftly cut down by Karon's swift front claws. The death-bringing sharp claws sliced through the bodies of fleeing ogres, severing them in two. The ogre's tenacious life force caused both halves of their bodies to twitch continuously on the ground, as fiery heat invaded, igniting the fatty bodies into raging flames. Only the strongest two-headed ogre mage, Sahai, possessed powerful spiritual power. Although he held a high position as a mage, he didn't lack the courageous ferocity of the ogres, forcibly controlling the boiling magic and releasing protective spells through his scepter, simultaneously retreating backwards, hoping to escape this deadly purgatory. Courting death, the ogre tyrant Moergo had been confidently guarding the other juvenile dragons, but the change happened too swiftly. Within moments, 10 powerful ogre warriors who could accompany him in conquering many tribes fell. Those precious ogre mages, like autumn crops harvested by a scythe, fell down in fields, prompting his anger to surge, striding quickly forward with the intent to tear apart the red dragon. Forewarned by Karon, the juvenile dragons seized the moment when everyone's attention was focused on the charging red dragon, suddenly gathering in the opposite direction to break through. Red Dragon Kleena was the first, spreading its wings and charging towards the ogre on the cliff who hadn't reacted yet. Silent White Dragon Kamid followed closely behind, launching an assault. At this moment, on the other side, the ogre giantess Fafnir also reacted, angrily yelling in ogre language, commanding nearby ogre warriors to disperse to avoid the red dragon's massacre. Her powerful spiritual energy followed swiftly. An invisible wave sought to invade Karon's mind, employing the same tactics used against Axie and Carlette, attempting to deliver a fatal attack to the red dragon. This was the ability inherited from ancient sea demons, the spiritual whip. Her strong spiritual power consolidated into tentacles, fiercely penetrating the red dragon's mind, lashing Karon's consciousness, while splitting a portion of spiritual energy in an attempt to control the red dragon's body. The red dragon's claws had already reached the wide-eyed two-headed mage. Karon felt control over his body being seized at that instant. The giant demon's formidable spiritual power was omnipresent, attempting to control every inch of muscle in his body. Within his sea of consciousness, the spiritual whip formed by the spiritual power lashed towards him. With a snap, his far inferior spiritual energy was sliced by the hot knife through butter-like force. A sharp pain erupted in his mind, and his ears rang as if they were struck inside a copper bell, filled with buzzing sounds. Karon's vision darkened abruptly, letting out a fierce roar, and the originally raging domain dissipated instantly. But at that very moment, the mysterious runes hidden within the heart energy vortex seemed to face a honey badger confronted by spicy snakes, or a rooster facing a centipede. The previously intricate runes emanated a faint glow. The mysterious rune structure stretched out countless tiny rune-formed chains, quietly emerging from Karon's consciousness. In the blink of an eye, it traversed the void as if reaching the portion of spiritual energy not belonging to Karon, the tiny rune chains slightly coiling and tightly locking onto the originally invisible, free-to-come-and-go portion of the giant demon's spiritual energy. The giant demon had no time to react as the chains emitted an absorbing force, guzzling the spiritual energy like water, absorbing it totally until nothing remained, satisfied retreating back into Karon's heart energy vortex, once again becoming a few seeds-like fragments attached to the structure. In this blink of an eye, Karon regained control of his body. Although his forward-moving body was momentarily uncontrollable, the momentum of Karon's sharp claws still swung out with inertia, tearing through the thin shield that the old ogre mage had kept burning with magic power within Karon's innate domain. The sharp dragon claws easily severed the right arm of the old ogre that was holding up the scepter. Giant demon Fafnir and the two-headed ogre mage let out screams almost simultaneously, but her screams were far more piercing than those of wizard Sahai. Always relying on powerful spiritual capabilities to be invincible, the giant demon had never experienced such intense pain. The mental anguish of being slashed and the fear of permanently losing part of her spirit completely overwhelmed her at that moment, and the giant demon, with golden blood oozing from her facial features, rolled on the ground in agony, clutching her head. Meanwhile, the newly awakened Karon, enduring the intense pain in his mind, wanted to return and tear apart the ogre with the severed arm. However, the ogre warriors previously driven off by the domain were now beginning to surround him, and the ogres on the cliff were no longer concerned about friendly fire, throwing their weapons recklessly. Ogre King Moergo had already arrived from behind. Having broken through the encirclement, he had no choice but to dodge while moving forward swiftly, dismissing the idea. Although he wanted to finish off his enemies, his own life was more important. Karon glanced back and saw the juvenile dragon, also breaking through the encirclement and flying away, and burst into laughter, his voice echoing between the cliffs on both sides of the canyon. "Ha ha ha, wait and see, you scum, you will live in constant dread in hell from now on. The dragon group's revenge will soon come. Take good care of Axie and Carlet, that'll be your only chance to beg for my mercy. Cunning and despicable dragon, if you have the guts, don't run away." The raging Moergo picked up the burned long spear left by a dead ogre warrior on the ground. The wooden body of the spear was charred, but the iron tip emitted a scorching temperature. He held the long spear in his hand, his right arm muscles bulging high, and with a sharp shout, the long spear shot towards the encircling red dragon. The formidable strength of the ogre endowed the long spear with unmatched speed, quickly approaching the red dragon's rear. Karon, hearing the sharp explosion of sound approaching rapidly from behind, couldn't help but tense up. He had been merely taunting the opponent to provoke caution from them, lest in a fit of rage, they slaughtered the two blue dragons after being toyed with by him. There may still be a chance to rescue the two blue dragons later, but he didn't want to be killed by the opponent before then. He was well aware of the ogre tyrant's immense power. Judging by his size, this ogre tyrant, one in tens of thousands amongst ogres, could potentially face off against a juvenile dragon. Although the outcome might not be desirable, the long spear thrown with full force by the ogre tyrant was not something Karon, the juvenile dragon, could withstand hastily. The evil dragon blood within Karon's body instantly boiled, and the surging magic power wildly coursed through his body. Crimson patterns illuminated his body surface, and the lines on his flesh wings were as red as blood. In that instant, his body entered an overloaded state, akin to stepping into the zone. This was the fruit of his experiment during his recent slumber. In this state, Karon possessed extraordinary mental focus and control over his body, elevating his strength, speed, reaction, and vision to the highest levels. With perception fully open, in this hair-trigger moment, he accelerated intensely to maximize his distance while twisting his body, retracting his extended limbs against his chest and abdomen, and raising his massive body upward. Thud! The hot iron spearhead grazed Karon's left rib area, easily piercing the thin metallic layer and scales on the surface of the red dragon's body, leaving flying blood spatters. Ow! Karon's body seemed to suddenly lose all its strength, causing him to plunge from the sky, crashing into the forest with snapping branches. Just when the ogres thought the red dragon was severely injured and no longer had any power to resist, they suddenly saw the nasty red dragon fly out from the thick foliage, wobbling as he ascended into the distant sky, actually flying even faster. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 29-28, The Dispersed Dragon Group. Chapter 29, Chapter 28, The Dispersed Dragon Group. The canyon has long since returned to calm, leaving only traces from the brief battle just now. The remaining ogre warriors picked up the weapons of their fallen comrades from the scorched ground. These iron spearheads were precious to ogres who didn't understand forging. The arm of the two-headed ogre Sahai had already started to heal slowly. He was with the few remaining intact ogre mages, using shaman divine skill to stabilize the giant demon's suffering spirit. A white dragon with a broken tail was bleeding from its mouth and nose, dragged by the ogre warriors like a dead dog. This was the unlucky Gomot, who thought being at the front was dangerous, so he stayed behind the juvenile dragons, and now he truly found himself behind the dragon group. Moergo excitedly directed the tribe's warriors to transport those shiny stones and gleaming gold tone ores from the juvenile dragon's dragon nest. Though ogres had no concept of wealth, Moergo knew these items could be exchanged with greedy merchants for many useful things. Orsus and his group only intended to watch the battle, so at the first reminder from the knowledgeable mage, they withdrew to the back of the crowd with the guards, avoiding detection by the red dragon during the battle. The merchants looked upon the piled-up gold mine jewelry being transported out from the dragon nest with joy but couldn't shake the regret in their hearts. These treasures could be exchanged for a heap of cheap cloth and damaged weapons, but the escaped juvenile dragons were too unfortunate a loss. Those juvenile dragons were infinitely more valuable than their weight in gold. No, even weighing dragons with simple wealth was foolish, especially that special red dragon. That red dragon clearly had the embryonic form of a domain. Even if Orsus was mistaken, the mage beside him would not be. The significance of an embryonic domain was known throughout the Icaria world. It represented an extraordinary level, above legend, below demigod, the unique ability of a domain-strong fighter. It was a power strong enough to be called the pillar of a nation, a strength that could establish a country alone. Though Orsus and the mage were not part of that high circle, they possessed substantial power compared to ordinary people, and they understood this concept. Thinking of this, Orsus quietly asked, "Master Loxu, do you have confidence?" Loxu, with a confident smile on his pale face, replied, "If you're asking me to capture that red dragon, I might not manage it, but with my ability, that red dragon definitely won't discover my tracking magic mark." Orsus's face lit up with a smile, praising, "Well done, Master Loxu. You're truly not to be outdone as a member of the High-Level Mage Association. When the time comes, we'll need you to point these ogres in the right direction. Not all ogres are fools. After the lesson from this episode, they're not necessarily willing to provoke those giant dragons again," Loxu noted warily, glancing at the beautiful giant demon and two-headed mage lying on the long couch. Every mage possessed spiritual power many times stronger than ordinary people. Yet, Loxu felt his spiritual power before this beautiful giant demon as if he were an ordinary person facing a mage. Only the mage's pride and his grasp of magic knowledge kept him from feeling fear, and he even wanted to study the giant demon. "I will offer them terms they cannot refuse. As long as they can capture that red dragon for me, I will bring them the power of civilization, forging techniques, blacksmiths, seeds for planting, and farmers. All can be sold to them." Orsus smiled with confidence. These were not problems for him. Previously, he hadn't given these things to the ogre tribe, partly because civilized world humans fundamentally looked down on these savage creatures. Besides possessing intelligence, these ogres were no different from animals to him, and Orsus didn't want the ogre tribe to grow stronger. Weakness was easier to control. Another reason was the innate profit-driven nature of merchants. The more eagerly the other side desired something, the less it should be sold easily to ensure a good price. "Also, Loxu, use your raven to send a letter back for me. I need the power belonging to my family to support me. You should also send a letter to the mages you're friendly with, but don't reveal this matter to them until they're nearly here, and my servant will inform them of the truth. After this is over, you'll receive your deserved reward, given the considerable number of juvenile dragons involved." A red dragon wobbled in the sky as if drunk, dropping blood traces along its flight above the towering trees. A long, thin wound ran from its lower waist to the front of its abdomen, so deep it almost revealed the writhing organs within. Karon forced himself to endure the stabbing pain, both spirit and flesh, with only one thought in mind: to keep flying forward, as far from the former dragon nest as possible. His consciousness grew fuzzy, only allowing his muscles to move autonomously. Thankfully, the wound wasn't wide. Under the giant dragon's robust recovery ability, it soon closed temporarily, preventing further blood loss. Karon didn't know how long or how far he'd flown until he could hold on no longer, plunging down from midair. His last thread of consciousness urged him to use his claws to dig out a makeshift burrow, not even managing any covering measures, before collapsing inside it, asleep. Fortunately, the rainy season had arrived. Torrential downpours formed a water curtain connecting heaven and earth, covering the forests everywhere in a white blur, diminishing the red dragon's scent and blood traces until they were barely detectable. Karon awoke after 3 days in the burrow. For dragons, mental microtraumas had a far deeper impact than physical scars over those 3 days, at least the larger half of the wounds had healed to almost free movement. But mentally, Karon felt like a person suffering a hangover from counterfeit alcohol for days on end. His head was still groggy and occasionally painful, while the thoughts of his once lively evil dragon mind seemed too sluggish. "Damn it," muttered the red dragon, accidentally swallowing muddy water that had flooded into the burrow. Karon quickly spat it out. The rain was too heavy. Once he loved listening to the sound of rain while lying in the burrow, now his mood was far from relaxed. The abundant rain was flooding the burrow, nearly covering his wings. As one of the most nearly perfect creatures, dragons had remarkable adaptability to environments. They could live freely on land, in the sky, or sea. Such water couldn't drown the red dragon. Still, the increasingly strong fishy scent in the burrow whetted Karon's appetite. He hadn't eaten in days, and every hint of smell was incredibly vivid to his senses. During the juvenile dragon stage, bodies rapidly grew and developed, needing vast amounts of food. Truly, half-grown boys can eat a man poor. Particularly, under the super-limit state, Karon's stomach was growling with hunger. The noise from the dragon's stomach might sound to others like dozens of frogs croaking together, but outside in the downpour, no creature would stay outside its nest. Even dragons struggled to find prey. Why not take a bite? Karon hesitated, gazing at the soft mud soaked by rainwater before him. It resembled glutinous rice cakes, tempting, with a draw Karon hadn't noticed before. Better not. Though dragons had strong stomachs capable of digesting soil, it lacked nutrition for them. To satisfy hunger, one must turn into an excavator, digging a lot. Karon tried to distract himself from attempting despite craving. Originally, after breaking through the ogre's encirclement that evening, Karon planned to visit the ogre's old nest by the reportedly rich gulf. After all, he used to be skilled in all conversion strategies there. Those coming to the dragon nest to besiege the dragon group must be elites from the ogre tribe. The powerful warriors left behind at the gulf likely wouldn't be too many. A trip could yield significant results. But injuries delayed him for days. Heading for the ogre's old nest now was a trap rather than a visit. I wonder how Das and the others are doing, although given the dragon's mobility, if they escape to the prairie, they'll see everything with their eyes. Once the juvenile dragons want to flee, capturing them will be difficult. Karon's mind swirled with various thoughts. His spirit, exhausted by trauma, soon drifted off to sleep again. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 30-29, I, Red Dragon, am robbing you. Chapter 30, Chapter 29, I, Red Dragon, am robbing you. The rain of the rainy season comes suddenly and stops quickly. Quickly, the accumulated rainwater is absorbed by the earth, and many animals start to become active again, with predators stepping out of their nests to look for dinner. Mountain deer leap and gallop through the forests, their nimble hooves undeterred by the damp soil. A few wild boars joyfully roll in the muddy pool granted by heaven, coating their bodies with thick layers of mud, which will dry and form armor to protect them from the predator's sharp claws and fangs. Several squirrels peek around on the branches, their fluffy tails curling over their heads like small fur caps. Squeak! A little squirrel seems to sense impending danger and slinks its tail into the tree hole, causing the remaining squirrels to scatter. The sound of hooves clattered in the jungle, initially heard hundreds of meters away, but quickly arrived nearby. How could cavalry appear and gallop at such speed in this dense vegetation and shrub-filled complex terrain? No, these are not human or beastmen cavalry but centaurs, a formidable tribe living in the vast rainforest. Several centaurs navigate the forest more agilely than the mountain deer, their broad hooves flying, and the splattering mud unable to catch up to their swift strides. The complex terrain actually provides them with ease in traversing the jungle, and the tall trees can also be used for leverage, as their sturdy hooves tread on the tree trunks as if they were flat ground. These centaurs have upper bodies like humans but are stronger, clad in leather armor made from ferocious beasts and animal hides, with their bows and shotguns aimed at the wild boars still rolling in the mud pools during their rapid run. Their powerful and precise archery is unaffected by the motion, as if a sudden rain strike. The arrows and thrown shotguns tear through the air with momentum and lightning speed, accurately hitting the hearts of several wild boars, causing blood to spill into the turbid mud pools. Every centaur warrior possesses exceptional archery talents that rival those renowned divine archers of the High Elves. Even a simple wooden bow in their hands can be a formidable threat, which is why these centaurs can tenaciously resist the ogre tribe's annexation and enslavement without shamans. Especially the leading centaur female warrior who holds a large yellow-black bow faintly emanating powerful magic radiance, clearly a weapon created from some mighty magical creature, exuding an extremely dangerous and lethal aura. Sunaya, your archery has improved again. The older centaur female warrior walks to the leading female warrior, looking gratified at the disciple about to come of age. Though not as robust as an adult centaur warrior, she is beginning to show the unique talents of a centaur. However, named centaur Sunaya does not respond to the topic but instead roves her gaze across the forest with her delicate nostrils sometimes quivering, then turns seriously. Be cautious, I sense a powerful presence, perhaps some mighty creature has entered the tribe's hunting grounds, not far from here. Though the older centaur hasn't detected anything amiss, she's not surprised. Although Sunaya's skills do not match her own, she has been gifted since childhood, once blessed by forest fairies, with strong spiritual perception, standing out in the centaur tribe's new generation. She must have detected something difficult for her to perceive, so she cups her fingers on her thick lips, whistling to signal the centaur warriors behind her to follow, then leading them galloping into the forest. The sunlight gradually descends, with the last twilight enveloping the land, and the forest dimming further. A few centaurs tread cautiously on the soft soil blanketed with fallen leaves, even with heavy prey on their broad backs, their footsteps lighter than the rustling leaves stirred by the forest's breeze. However, the rustling leaves seem abnormally loud, a peculiar danger seems imminent in the dim forest. Something is there. Centaur Sunaya stops alertly, slightly drawing her bow and arrow, wary of potential danger. The other centaur warriors also drop their prey and grip their shotguns tightly, enjoying violence rather than fearing combat. A rustle among the trees, a giant dragon slowly steps forth from the dim forest undergrowth. Karon gleams his eyes and chuckles at the vigilant centaurs. This mountain, oh, this forest belongs to giant dragons, with its prey as ours. To pass through here, you must leave some prey as a toll. Giant dragon. Thoughts flood the centaur minds. How could a giant dragon appear here, especially a red dragon known for its ruthlessness and savagery? Fortunately, this giant dragon only demands leaving prey. This is the centaur's second thought. To most sentient beings of the Icaria world, dragons are apex beings representing insurmountable power. Although this dragon seems young, even the most arrogant and combative male centaur wouldn't think he can defeat the red dragon now present. In remote lands, innate power naturally holds irresistible authority. So the centaurs don't conceptualize this as robbery but promptly place their prey before Karon. May we go now, mighty giant dragon? The older female centaur places her hands on her ample chest, bowing respectfully to the dragon, showing respect for strength. Wait. Possessing innate sensitivity to treasure, perhaps due to hunger and injuries, the greed stirred by evil dragon blood weakened Karon's resolve. Eyeing the centaur with a special longbow, he covets, that bow seems like a nice treasure, let me see. Sunaya knows dragons are inherently greedy. Once the treasure bow leaves her hands, it'll never return. Against this, only inciting the dragon's wrath would achieve nothing else, leaving her no choice but to touch the longbow handed down through the tribe for centuries, one of the few tribal treasures she hesitantly offers to Karon. Today, this longbow slips from my hands, decreasing the tribe's treasures again. Sunaya regrets, feeling guilt, yet must introduce, this bow is crafted from the sinews of a powerful snake slain by a centaur tribe hero hundreds of years ago, allowing users to harness the wind, making arrows as swift as lightning. However, Karon merely glances at it, then lowers his head sniffing it, waving his dragon claw, indicating the centaur to keep the bow and arrow, muttering, "No wonder it smells familiar, I've surely eaten such snakes, probably tastes good." Hey! Sunaya looks surprised at the dragon, genuinely unprepared for the red dragon just wanting to glance at the bow. This red dragon hardly resembles greedy dragons, not seizing any treasure. "What's hey? I can't use it." Karon sees the little mare's thoughts plainly, sulking, "Why aren't you going? Don't tell me you're mooching here." "Ah, no, mighty dragon, thank you for your generosity." The centaurs hastily reclaim the longbow, fearing the dragon's change of mind, constantly thanking it, as if the dragon refraining from seizing her treasure was virtuous. Karon bothers no more, grabs the two fattest wild boars from the ground, and ambles towards his temporary dug cave, needing food urgently. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 31-30, Carlet's Choice. Chapter 31, Chapter 30, Carlet's Choice. Karon lay prone in the underground cavern he had just re-excavated, his consciousness sinking into his sea of spirit. The energy accumulated in the heart energy vortex had been used up in his last enhancement, leaving nothing behind. Karon discovered that there were 2 more strands of power of thought connected to the heart energy vortex, but he wasn't sure who had established these heart energy links. These 2 strands of power of thought were faint, barely capable of drawing any heart energy. The connections of the power of thought with the dragon group and Dogman's beloved mostly still existed, but possibly because of the great distance, Karon couldn't perceive the objects these strands were connected to, so he couldn't determine the exact situation of the juvenile dragons. Karon once again immersed his consciousness into the information that had solidified into bloodline talent after his enhancement, displayed in a form he could understand. Bloodline solidification, super limit state growth. Your body's overall qualities will grow to the maximum extent within the growth range of your bloodline, with your potential being fully developed. Bloodline solidification, mental overclocking. By using powerful mind control, you enter a certain overclocking mode, freely exerting all your strength and abilities. He was very satisfied with these 2 enhanced bloodline ability talents. The former made him a tank-like warrior among the giant dragons, with every aspect being the best possible solution currently allowed. In the face of this bloodline capability, all potential became a tangible talent, an extremely powerful growth ability. The latter allowed him to fully exert his combat abilities when necessary, a capability he attempted and achieved after some contemplation. It is important to understand that for any creature, the ability to exert all of their capabilities depends on many factors: courage, willpower, and even bodily health. This ability enabled Karon to maintain combat ability even when at a disadvantage in certain aspects. In his eyes, this was far more useful than any extra piece of magic. Lastly, he was pleased to find that this attempt proved that the direction of the heart energy enhancement could be controlled by himself, which was most important. He clenched his flexible left paw with his right, opening, extending, grasping, and moving his dragon claw freely, clearly more dexterous than before. Ever since using mental overclocking, he retained a vivid impression of that sensation, vaguely feeling that his bodily agility had also improved somewhat. Perhaps frequent use of this ability might bring an unexpected surprise. Just then, Karon's awareness shifted, and he detected a visitor outside the caverns. Centaur Sunaya arrived outside the cave with several half-human warriors who had accompanied her a few days prior. This time, they bore no weapons but offerings from the centaur tribe to the giant dragon. Sunaya, being the most powerful warrior of the tribe and the son of the tribal leader Kali, was already highly regarded among the centaurs. Moreover, she was one of the strong contenders for the next tribal leader. Hence, upon returning to the tribe and reporting the appearance of a red dragon in the centaur territory, the centaurs took it seriously. These centaurs were not like the crazed ogres. Tribes that could survive and develop in the wilderness forest had their own ways of survival, not relying solely on force. Thus, the centaurs decided to befriend this unfamiliar giant dragon. On one hand, because according to Sunaya, the red dragon wasn't particularly difficult to deal with, and on the other hand, they hoped to use the dragon's strength to combat the ogres who constantly sought to enslave and annihilate the centaur tribe. At the very least, they couldn't allow this giant dragon to cause trouble within the centaur territory and could also monitor its actions. Exhaling deeply, Sunaya, recalling the task entrusted to her by the tribe, took a deep breath to ease her tension before facing the dragon, calling out, "Great dragon, are you there?" The condition of white dragon Gomot was wretched, now tailless. He was bound by sturdy vines hanging from a tall wooden frame, limbs tightly bound, head facing downward, only a pair of wings able to move and struggle. Maybe those ogres just wanted to see the dragon's helpless struggle. Orsis, with his guards, hid in the tent, peeking outside. He didn't want the dragon to know that the idea was his, to avoid issues later with the juvenile dragons. Ogre tyrant Moergo lashed at Gomot with a venom-soaked whip made by wizard Sahut, shredding the fine scales on the white dragon's body. His skin flayed, while the venom on the whip caused excruciating, bone-deep itching and pain, uncontrollably twitching muscles, the intact scales constantly opening and closing. "I must say, you arrogant dragons sure have tough mouths. Not agreeing to cooperate is just suffering needlessly. Those runaway juvenile dragons wouldn't dare come to save you." Moergo's single giant eye full of the pleasure of tormenting the opponent, his whip lashing heavier each time. "Karon, he will have his revenge," Gomot gasped for a breath, uttering his words with difficulty. "If he dares come, it'll be a good chance to show him my big axe." The ogre laughed off the white dragon's defiance, taking another heavy swing with his whip. Not wanting to scream in agony in front of these lowly ogres, Gomot bit down on his fangs, blood trickling from his mouth, his ice-blue vertical pupils turning red until the unbearable, deep bone pain and itch overwhelmed him, and white dragon Gomot finally closed his eyes, losing consciousness from the beating. "This little dragon is too weak, can't take a beating." The ogre's unsatisfied gaze turned to two similarly hung blue dragons, wickedly grinning as he approached, stopping in front of blue dragon Carlet. Moergo squatted down, patted the blue dragon's beautiful head, and asked, "Are you willing to cooperate, or do you want to try my whip?" "Pa," Carlet spat, had his magic and evil dragon blood not been suppressed by witchcraft and human mage's magic potion, he would have released a dragon breath. "Hee," Moergo let out an odd laugh, wiped his face, then let down the hung blue dragon Carlet, encircling him a couple of times before suddenly lashing out with the whip. Responding to the sudden pain, Carlet's head lifted, but his weak and powerless limbs were bound, unable to struggle, his entire dragon form trembling. Moergo seemed to awaken his animalistic nature, his whip then began to swing, hitting the blue dragon Carlet humiliated and prone on the ground, muscles twitching uncontrolled, scales unable to move freely, constantly opening and closing. Blue dragon's screams excited Moergo more, violence and animal desire emerged in his single eye, the ogre panting heavily, he was eyeing the blue dragon's body. "Huff, I'd love to see what race a spawn of ogre and dragon would be." Moergo mused while fiercely swinging the whip, gradually approaching the blue dragon. "Ah, I agree to cooperate. Just get lost already." Blue dragon Carlet screamed amidst the physical torment. Dragons didn't hold the concept of chastity, they were more open than most creatures. Some seductive dragons even had moments with kobolds. Carlet just couldn't accept the lowly ogre taking the dominant position to abuse him, treating him as a slave. Moreover, Blue Dragon was just in the adolescent stage, not fully sexually mature, or maybe this was an excuse to evade. Statistically, less than 1/5 of 5-color dragons in the Icaria world survive to adulthood, although good dragons fare much better. Most 5-color dragons perished in their youth, with most legendary dragon-slaying feats starring young giant dragons, white dragons topping the list. On one hand, young giant dragons were very active, their rapidly growing strength making them reckless. On the other hand, young giant dragons were much harder to control than juvenile dragons, once captured, they were often killed, not held. It seems that the evil dragon god Tiamat didn't favor 5-color dragons as she claimed. If Carlet didn't obey, unlike the controllable juvenile dragons, he would be killed. Stop it, King Moergo, this blue dragon has agreed to cooperate with us, right? Orsus and the mage hastily intervened with the guards to calm the increasingly heated ogre. Now was the time to earn the dragon's favor, his appearance was well timed. Moergo glanced disdainfully at the merchant, disregarding him, driven by the ogre's strong desires, his few wits overwhelmed, only hindered by the unfamiliar physiological differences between dragons and various creatures. Sahi, the elderly two-headed ogre with a severed arm, emerged from the quiet tent. As an aged ogre mage, Sahi no longer possessed the youthful vigor and life force, forever remaining an arm-severed ogre. His raspy voice conveyed opinions from the giant demon. Stop it, Moergo, Blue Dragon's cooperation is crucial for us. We need to completely eliminate those escaped juvenile dragons, delaying any longer only endangers the tribe further. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 32-31, The New Dragon's Beloved. Chapter 32, Chapter 31, The New Dragon's Beloved. Is this meteorite gold from the star realm or some other plane? What is this metal? Karon asked in astonishment as he gazed at the treasure the centaur warrior Sunaya had presented him. Within the Red Dragon's legacy was a wealth of diverse knowledge, including comprehensive introductions to many species. Basic knowledge that interested a giant dragon was always present in the dragon's legacy knowledge base. However, Karon couldn't find any relevant knowledge about the piece of metal in front of him, which was dotted with star-like spots amidst its dark hue. This piece of metal was clearly a rare magic metal with excellent magic power ductility, suitable for creating magic weapons or some powerful treasures. The dragon's legacy should not overlook such a rare metal. Even if a dragon wouldn't use this metal to make weapons, the metal itself should be a fine collectible for a dragon, something that would feel pleasant to sleep on. This was why Karon came to such a judgment. The centaur maiden, seeing that the dragon was also unaware of the details of the metal before them, shook her head and said, "Honorable dragon, we also do not know the precise origin of this mysterious metal. It is said that our centaur hero Karon found it in the monster's lair after defeating a troublesome 9-headed hydra centuries ago. Chiron's powerful weapon, the bronze spear, was crafted from this metal. It's the only treasure left in our tribe, which we offer to the mighty dragon in hopes of maintaining a friendly relationship with you." Hearing this, Karon couldn't help but chuckle. He recalled the longbow the centaur maiden held the other day. It was also a powerful magic weapon, made from the tendons and bones of some formidable snake-lizard monster. It seemed that the powerful snake monster described by the centaur was this unlucky 9-headed hydra. Not only was this monster slain and its flesh used by others, but even the hoarded treasures in its lair were taken away, which was truly tragic. However, such situations were common in the wilderness. Even when Karon hunted, he would not only devour his prey entirely, but if the bones were hard enough, he would use them to grind his teeth. At this thought, Karon felt a chill in his heart. Such situations were the norm in the wilderness, and how was the rest of the world any different? Originally, he intended to proceed step by step, waiting to gather enough strength before subduing the beloved. This mindset was influenced by the dragon's typical attitude that time alone would gradually amplify power. This was a real world, but Karon had always harbored a somewhat playful attitude. He had been well protected before and couldn't truly understand that every piece of land in this world for survival must be fought for, and this was the same even for a giant dragon. The world does not turn according to Karon's will, and unforeseen events and dangers could occur at any moment. Even the blue dragon Carlet, who lounged daily in its lair, could be captured by ogres. And these ogres were merely trying to prevent their territory from being seized by a dragon to satisfy the growing needs of their ogre tribe. The red dragon felt he needed to adjust his attitude. He solemnly took the piece of magic metal, swallowed it into his dragon's storage stomach, then lowered his fearsome head, his vertical pupils fixed intently on the now relaxed centaur, and directly asked, "I accept this gift, now tell me the true purpose of the centaur tribe." Although Centaur Sunaya was still a youth, she believed her will was strong enough after training in combat since childhood. But faced with the dragon's cold, emotionless vertical pupils, she felt they could see through her inner weaknesses she was unaware of. She quickly lowered her head, answering with great respect, "We hope to borrow your mighty dragon powers to fight against those cruel and vicious ogre tribes. Also, my mother Kali, the centaur tribal leader, wishes for you to visit the tribe, where she will personally discuss this matter with you." Cruel and vicious? Karon scratched his chin with his dragon claw, feeling as if these words, which were not kind, were directed at him. In the red dragon stereotype, these terms certainly ranked first. However, he could hardly refuse the olive branch extended by the centaur tribe. Even without mentioning it, the warrior race's centaur tribe had been on Karon's list of potential beloveds ever since he first saw them. And now, both shared a common enemy, the ogre tribe. It wouldn't hurt to visit, but he had to be careful. Karon nodded, gesturing for the centaur to lead the way, and soared into the air with a flap of his wings. "Then what are we waiting for? Let's go, I'd like to experience the hospitality of the centaur tribe." The centaur tribe was located in a wind-sheltered valley not far from the sea. Steep cliffs and mountains blocked the howling sea winds coming from the ocean. The clear and clean river provided stable drinking water for the centaurs, and the flat land was suitable for building tribal dwellings. The expansive view from the cliffs also offered excellent vigilance and protection, making the peaceful valley a rare haven. Karon fluttered his wings, each over 10 meters long, and circled over the valley multiple times. His heightened senses picked up the shouts of centaur sentries on the cliff exclaiming that the dragon had arrived, and finding everything normal in the centaur tribe, he leisurely landed. Major members of the centaur tribe had already gathered at the camp entrance following Sunaya's notification. The tribal leader, Kali, was the strongest within the tribe. Only the tribal leader could receive a name similar to the centaur hero Karon. Beside Kali stood her mate, Zogo, a robust male centaur with bulging muscles exuding an indescribable masculine aura. Joining them was the adult female centaur Oni, who had previously hunted with Sunaya, occupying a position equivalent to warrior chief in the tribe. There were also a few elderly centaurs present, responsible for the tribe's traditions and inheritance, holding considerable speaking power. The red dragon's body landed, wings folding at the sides, but his rear limbs remained upright, appearing somewhat high and mighty as he gazed down at the centaurs averaging about 3 meters tall. The centaur leader Kali looked up directly at the remarkably robust, double-winged red dragon adorned with many mysterious patterns. A sense of satisfaction flickered through her large eyes, thoroughly unconcerned by the jealousy rising on her mate's face. Becoming the affiliates of a dragon was not uncommon in the wilderness. Though dragons did enslave their beloveds, most simply required obedience and regular tributes to keep them satisfied and unbothered. Unlike those damnable ogres who not only slaughtered and enslaved centaurs but, in a few short years, caused a once thriving tribe of 700 warriors to dwindle down to just over 200 members. Additionally, they treated centaurs as tools for venting and sold them as goods to merchants, an intolerable humiliation for the centaur tribe. Yet the centaur tribe did not wish to be affiliated with a weak dragon, for that would mean spending too much time waiting for the dragon's growth. The presence and posture of this red dragon greatly satisfied the centaurs. Thus, Kali led the centaurs in kneeling on one knee before Karon, bowing and saying, "Mighty red dragon, we, the centaur tribe, wish to submit to you as your loyal beloveds, offering everything to please your spirit. Our only request is your protection and favor. Is it that straightforward?" Still maintaining his pretense, Karon was a bit puzzled by how fast the centaur tribe kneeled. He anticipated needing a round of bargaining. Unbeknownst to Karon, not only in the human world were looks important across all creatures, physical appearance holds weight, especially in the wild lands beyond civilization. Without societal decorum, beings in the wilderness respond more openly. When one exhibits intimidating beauty, other creatures are more likely to harbor goodwill. However, Karon did not hesitate, agreeing directly, "I accept your request," and the red dragon's towering body relaxed into a crouch. His dragon claw gently rested upon the head of the kneeling centaur leader, his thundering voice resonating in the ears of centaurs, "And remember, my name is Karon Gogomola, but I prefer you to call me Karon." "Yes, Lord Karon, Master of the Centaur Tribe." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 33-32, An Old Horse Eats Young Grass. Chapter 33, Chapter 32, An Old Horse Eats Young Grass. As night fell, the Centaur tribe's camp came alive with excitement. The blazing campfire in the center of the camp ignited the passion of these centaurs, who were always in a combat state. Many female centaurs leaped around the campfire like mountain deer, their nimble bodies performing a dance of untamed wildness woven differently than humans, their round and full bodies attracting the male centaurs. The male centaurs displayed their robust bodies without holding back. Some beat their strong chest muscles and danced with the female centaurs they fancied, while others picked up their battle lances, striking sturdy shields, and danced a war dance around the female centaurs. Some male centaurs engaged in full-blown fights, vying for the favor of the female centaurs, stripping their upper bodies to reveal carved-like muscles, wrestling without any concern for others watching. Many centaurs who couldn't join in simply sat on the long low tables at the outermost circle, gobbling food with wide mouths while howling incoherent songs, the atmosphere growing more fervent. Karon, however, squatted among the outer circle of centaurs, having a table all to himself, not due to any special treatment from the centaurs, but because his size wasn't exactly small. To Karon's surprise, the food prepared by the centaur tribe was quite good. In front of him was a dinner that wasn't extravagant but substantial. Spices from the forest were evenly sprinkled on large pieces of charred meat, a pot of thick white mushroom soup mixed with appropriately sliced meat, and a large barrel of honey cassava mead. Gurgling, with his appetite whetted, Karon downed a large chunk of meat and lifted the big pot, drinking the entire mushroom and meat soup like water. A satisfying sound rose from Karon's stomach and emerged from his throat. He hadn't eaten such a fitting meal in a long time, having spent days consuming either raw prey or his own cooking, at most with an extravagant layer of honey. Even a dragon could get tired of adapting to most of the world's food. Karon put down the wooden basin, intending to wipe his shiny mouth with his claw when the centaur maiden Sunaya sitting near him quickly put down her food, picked up a clean beast hide from the table, and wiped the mouth of the giant dragon. The fullness held by cloth strips gently brushed against Karon's side during the action. Nearby, the centaur leader Kali wore a smile of approval for this child's understanding, casting a sidelong glance at her mate Zogo, who was busy eating, before shaking her head again. Ahem, experiencing a young master's treatment for the first time, Karon grasped what humans would call a bucket of honey cassava mead, took 2 sips to moisten his parched throat, and said, "Sunaya, does your centaur tribe have a dedicated chef? The cooking skill here could likely open an inn in the human empire." Having finished wiping the dragon's mouth, Sunaya returned to the table, holding a deer leg and gnawing at it energetically. Centaur maidens, unlike human maidens, were unconcerned with table manners or modesty. She raised her head, her mouth bulging with food, and mumbled incoherently. "We centaurs only know how to hunt and fight, cooking isn't our skill. These dishes were made by a half-elf slave captured by my mother. These half-elves are very skilled, capable of creating many delicious foods." Half-elf, Karon's eyes lit up. Half-elves, a small and intelligent humanoid race, are usually about half the height of normal humans, hence the name. Most half-elves are simple by nature, extremely passionate about and enjoy food, hence they are also fond of creating fine cuisine, capable of sophisticated culinary techniques to produce delicious food. This single half-elf made it all worthwhile. Karon's appetite for gourmet cuisine was already suggesting he find a way to make this half-elf chef his personal cook. In the future, he could tell the half-elf what he wanted to eat, and have them research and create it, like various stir-fries and hot pots, or all kinds of desserts and cakes. Thinking this, Karen's eyes roamed the camp shiftily, not drawn by the centaurs dancing wildly around the campfire, but by those hidden in the shadows, passionate and eager centaurs. Like humans, centaurs can also experience hormonal heat at any time, but unlike humans, they lacked moral ethics and relative order during these times. The best concession they made was not mating in the bright space before the campfire. Of course, some would on a whim, want to get on a horse directly, yet they would generally be kicked away by other centaurs annoyed with their obstructions. Thanks to the giant dragon's superb eyesight, Karon could clearly see every move of the fiery centaurs, their wild and unrestrained postures subtly changing Karen's slit pupils to round ones. There's no need to worry, dragons possess the magical ability to freely adjust their pupils, allowing them to gain a more expansive view. Karon wasn't being lecherous. He was merely remembering the words of some famous person, maybe that famous person named Joe, a treeman, who spoke of, always maintain the heart of an apprentice. Tonight, Karon was diligently studying those gestures, never before seen or heard, oh yes, knowledge. Why hadn't he seen this knowledge in the dragon race's heritage? Perhaps the knowledge wasn't accessible to him because of his age? Karon mused, rubbing his chin with a dragon claw, considering whether to include this knowledge in the heritage later. It seemed quite interesting. Of course, he didn't forget to disguise his intentions. His occasional sweeping gaze appeared to oversee the scene, but only when he lifted his cup would his eyes stay fixed, though such concealment revealed nothing to anyone. As it turned out, Karon spent the entire night finishing just one cup of this honey cassava mead. Its potency was indeed intense. Due to Karon's size, the centaur tribe didn't have any wooden huts suitable for him to reside in. The largest building was the place for venerating ancestors and fallen heroes, and it wouldn't be right for him to occupy their ancestors' resting place upon arrival. Thus, the centaur tribe had to temporarily construct a tent using various beast hides as a canopy to accommodate the red dragon's rest. Inside the tent, the ground was covered with various soft beast hides, some of which were luxurious furs from powerful monsters previously hunted by the centaur tribe, stacked to form a warm bed where Karon could detect the scent of many fierce beasts. Karon was very satisfied with this bed, the gentle texture offering a pleasure different from lying on gold coins. The dragon's excellent control of his body prevented concern that long occupancy might ignite these precious furs. Still, he felt regret that his transformation skill was yet to be mastered, thwarting his thoughts of rolling on the ground and burying his whole body in the bed's tuff. But Karon contentedly lay down on his bed anyway. This warm bed was much more comfortable than his dragon nest. Dragons enjoy warmth and heat. He yawned wide, ready to rest, but his open mouth didn't shut as he asked in surprise, "Sunaya, why aren't you resting? What are you doing here?" The centaur maiden's face bore a certain resolute look as she knelt and said, "The centaur tribe is now the beloved of Lord Karon. I was chosen to serve Lord Karon." Gah! Karon watched the centaur, whose resolute face suggested some sort of sacrifice, imagining black lines appearing over his head. Heaven bless, his interest in centaurs was purely curiosity and a thirst for learning, not attraction. But he understood this as the centaur tribe's way of appeasing him. The centaur maiden was essentially a hostage of sorts, so he couldn't outright refuse. He raised his chin and gestured, indicating she could stay elsewhere in the tent. However, the centaur seemed to misunderstand, her resolute eyes extending her hands over. "What are you doing? I'm just a juvenile dragon, your actions are like an old horse eating tender grass." The red dragon's scales nearly stood on end in fright as he hurriedly stopped Sunaya from coming closer. Ah, the centaur maiden, a strong warrior, was blushing at this point, awkwardly explaining, "I'm barely an adult myself, only in my early 20s. "All the more reason no," Karon exclaimed, sweeping his tail to push Sunaya to the corner of the tent, "you just stay there." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 34-33, Conspiracy. Chapter 34, Chapter 33, Conspiracy. A gigantic passenger airship, filled with formidable warriors and several advanced mages, slowly descended on the coast before the ogre tribe's camp, where Orsus had been waiting with his guards. The reinforcements he needed had finally arrived, and his plan would soon be put into action. Success was continually beckoning to him. He wasn't particularly surprised at the speed of the reinforcements. These high-tier mages, originating from the High-Level Mage Association, already had the ability to freely set up teleportation gates, provided they had enough time and coordinate guidance. But upon seeing the first person alight from the airship, Orsus couldn't help but exclaim in shock, "Will, how could it be you?" Will Clarence, like Orsus Clarence, hailed from the same family. However, whereas Orsus was relegated to the awkward position of being a subordinate merchant group leader due to his remote branch lineage, Will's status was considerably higher. He was the future head of the Clarence clan and its current mainstay, the eldest son of the Gata Empire's treasurer. A formidable warrior himself, he commanded significant loyalty within the clan. Will Clarence's tall frame was remarkably robust. He glanced over at the servant samurai who had once been loyal to Orsus and now hid behind him. With a slight smile, he said, "Why can't it be me? Your discovery of the juvenile dragon group was reported to me by Boni. This is an extremely important opportunity for the family, allowing it to further advance. Don't worry, Orsus, the family won't overlook someone who has made contributions. I will reward you." Orsus knew that the warrior Boni, who had once been faithful to him, had chosen the stronger Will, effectively shattering his plans. However, he still signaled with his eyes to Master Loxu standing beside him. If Master Loxu could unite the other mages, there might still be a chance for him to contest Will for plan leadership. Loxu understood Orsus's intention. The two had been companions for many years and had enough tacit understanding. But he also understood mages. These mages only sought benefits, and Orsus, with his relatively lower strength and status, couldn't offer a better deal than Will Clarence, so he shook his head. Therefore, Orsus quickly plastered on a smile, moved forward to welcome Will, and cheerfully said as he clasped Will's hand from high above, "You arrived just in time, Will. I happen to have a plan that might serve as a reference for you." "Bag, you're truly a loyal kobold," Blue Dragon Das said, looking down at the small kobold. After the upheaval in the Dragon Nest Canyon, the kobolds, having lost their support, quietly moved back to their burrows on the prairie under the leadership of Chief Bag, and found the juvenile dragons who, out of fear of the mysterious power of the ogre giant demon, dared not approach the dragon nest. It's quite odd to say, but kobolds, who submit to the rule of the giant dragons, seem inherently drawn to them as if it were a preset in their nature and bloodline. Once a kobold becomes a dragon's beloved, it will never bow to any other power. Even when facing destruction, it will only flee, though they often run even faster than rabbits. These days, the juvenile dragons relied on Bag, who led his kobolds to explore the Dragon Nest Mountain for information, and now Bag brought back news that delighted the dragons. "I found 2 blue dragons and a white dragon in the dragon nest, but didn't see Lord Karon. I didn't dare to get too close, so I came back without a clear view of the situation," Bag said, somewhat dejected, for in his heart, that beautiful and strong red dragon was his true lord. Perhaps for the rare loyalty of the kobold, Red Dragon Kleena actually consoled Bag, "Rest assured, Karon is smarter and stronger than all of us. Even if he hasn't returned to the dragon nest for now, he might be hiding somewhere." As Bag stepped back, the juvenile dragons watched him intently before turning their gaze to the blue dragon, who, in its usual stable state, seemed to be the leader the juveniles looked up to for guidance. White Dragon Kamid had already stepped forward. Although dragons do not express emotions as obviously as humans do, as Gomot's brother, Kamid showed some concern. "Should we go back and take a look, Das? It seems Lord Carlet took Axi and Gomot back. We should understand the situation." Antagena and Rosanni, who hadn't spoken, also looked hopefully at Das. Without the protection of the dragon nest these days, the juvenile dragons hadn't dared to sleep with their eyes fully closed. Even the slightest disturbance startled them like a timid herd on the prairie. They had indeed had enough of such days and missed the sense of security in the dragon nest even more. Das agreed, let's go back and take a look. With Carlet and Axie around, as long as we are careful, there's no need to fear those ogres returning. The juvenile dragons soared into the sky, eager to return to the dragon nest like wanderers long separated from home. Blue Dragon Carlet lay quietly in the canyon that used to house the juvenile dragons, lazily pretending to sunbathe. Beside her were lifelike illusions of Gomot and Axie, crafted by the handiwork of a human mage. Though those human mages, who looked so fragile as to be easily slain with a swipe of her claw, lurked in the shadows beside her, the magic restraint left her no room for extraneous thoughts. Although she might face the choice of betraying her kind, she wouldn't feel guilty about it. In truth, most five-colored giant dragons adhered to the survival law of the jungle beasts to harm others for self-gain. She only hoped those humans would keep their promises and let her go after their success. As for those few juvenile dragons, though regrettable, she wasn't overly concerned, as she could hatch a new batch given time. The sound of dragon wings flapping reverberated through the sky. The unique sound was unmistakable, as the magic-supported dragon wings produced it repeatedly when they flapped powerfully and at long intervals in the wind, like a giant canvas tarp being dragged. Carlet looked up. It was indeed several juvenile dragons from the family, cautiously circling to peer down from high above. Together with the mage hidden in the magic array in the shadows, Will Clarence gestured to the mage beside him, who immediately channeled their magic and activated the restriction on Blue Dragon's soul. Carlet let out a long dragon's roar, issuing a summons to the juvenile dragons. The juvenile dragons roared in response, having no suspicion it was a trap. Being only marginally more than magic idiots, they could not detect the means of high-level mages from the Gata Empire and unwittingly entered the encirclement. Once the juvenile dragons saw the warriors and mages emerging from the shadow array, they realized they had been baited just as Karon liked to fish with a straight hook. These juvenile dragons had become the hooked fish. Once the no-fly array was activated, they were like fish out of water. You betrayed us, Carlet. Klena's anger turned into flames as she lashed out at those frail-looking mages, and the other juvenile dragons also leaped in defiance, unwilling to submit. However, the warriors present were elite forces Will had drawn from his clan, all having awakened their power seeds and stepped into the extraordinary stage, averaging 4 to 5 tiers as extraordinary warriors. Will himself was a level 11 high-tier warrior. Though still far from the holy sanctuary post-level 16, with his abilities, he could easily serve as a legion captain within the Empire's legions. The juvenile dragons, deprived of magic power and flight ability, had not even approached the mage's shield before being scorched by fireballs and slipping over the icy ground formed beneath. Warriors launching sneak attacks from behind flung chains through the limbs and wings of the juvenile dragons, dragging them back. The mages seated within their pentagram arrays activated them, deploying nets specifically designed to ensnare dragons to trap the juvenile dragons. Wonderful, Will exclaimed, his excitement palpable. His golden locks rippled uncontrollably in the surge of power within him. Such a contribution, surely even my father will view me in a new light. Turning to his warriors, he made a solemn promise: once we've ensnared the red dragon as it meets the same end as these rabbits, successful capture will mean receiving gold coins equal to each of your weights. This is bad, very bad, materialized an invisible silhouette from the forest above the canyon, a pick elf in a green petal fairy dress seemingly merging with the green woodland. The little elf Riven knitted her slim eyebrows in worry to herself. Those idiots, Das, were captured by humans. I have to report this to Karon, but where even is Karon? Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 35-34, Targeting the Ogres. Chapter 35, Chapter 34, Targeting the Ogres. The centaurs originally wanted to build a new dwelling for the red dragon, but Karon did not plan to stay here for long. He also quite liked the large tent made of beast hides and logs, so he declined the centaur's kind offer. The red dragon was currently lying in the uniquely prominent large tent located at the center of the centaur camp, while centaur maiden Sunaya was attentively cleaning the lazy dragon's scales with clean fur. There were also some scale flakes in the gaps of the dragon's dazzling scales, which were difficult to clean. This was the protective layer formed by the dragon's body's magic power, which made it unavoidable, as it was not external dust or other stains. However, for Sunaya, this task did not seem like a laborious chore. Much like most females around the world who find it difficult to refuse beautiful shining things, the centaur maiden couldn't resist the red dragon's scales, which resembled thin, round gemstone-like beauty. This could be seen from the occasional centaur ballads hummed by Sunaya. Karon was somewhat comfortably half-closing his eyes. In his perception, the centaur tribe did not simply form a heart energy transmission connection with him just by becoming his cherished ones. Only a few rough powers of thought were connected to him, including the centaur maiden Sunaya in front of him. It seems I need to lead these centaurs to some victorious results to speed up their recognition of me, the red dragon pondered. Just as the ogre tribe was also the enemy of the giant dragon, Karon harbored thoughts of destroying the ogre tribe to intimidate the surrounding monsters and tribes of the dragon nest. This was a heartfelt intention of Karon, as well as the will of the evil dragon blood. But the ogre tribe is very powerful. The strength of the ogre together with the warriors of the entire ogre tribe is something I can't confront head-on right now. Karon was well aware that with his strength as a juvenile dragon, he could not completely overpower the ogre tyrant Moergo at his peak. Without the long tail, the red dragon's body was not even as tall as an ogre. As for those juvenile dragons, they have already run far away, and Karon was too lazy to spend time looking for them, given that the distance from the centaur camp to the dragon nest was already several hundred miles. As long as he made some noise, if there were any dragons in the vicinity, they would surely come to join him. Karon was not reckless by nature. Since he had decided to take action, it was natural to make some plans. After thinking for a while, he patted Sunaya, who was diligently wiping the scales with his wing to make her stop, then stood up and said to the centaur, "Let's go, Sunaya, accompany me on a trip." The red dragon led the centaur out of the camp. He ascended into the sky, while the centaur ran through the dense woods, leading the dragon to the areas where the ogres often hunted. The centaur tribe's territory bordered the ruling region of the ogre tribe. The northern and southern extents of the ogre's bay overlapped with the territories of the giant dragon and the centaur, creating an impression of being sandwiched in the middle. However, the ogre tribe's location was actually to the east, while a vast area to the west remained unexplored by either group. However, as the centaurs gradually retreated and contracted southward due to prolonged conflicts with the ogres, the range of activities for the ogre tribe gradually expanded. At this moment, a few ogres in the forest were bullying two forest giants. The skin of these giants was a greasy green and also grown with a thin layer of moss, making them look unattractive. But ogres, well, it's widely known that dragons can at least be explained with a broad aesthetic, whereas ogres truly disregarded any distinction between raw and cooked. Ogres could lust equally after any creature, even wanting to try with the tree men. They also enjoyed turning the corpses of these creatures into food after venting their desires. The remaining bones would be polished into decorations and weapons, maximizing the utilization of their prey. Centaur Sunaya silently appeared in front of these ogres. Her longbow, fully drawn with the automatic absorption of magic power, launched a sharp arrow that pierced through an ogre's skull, the arrowhead coated with ogre cerebral fluid as it exited from the back of its head. The ogre's body was still twitching as it fell with a soft plop sound. It wasn't until this moment that the other ogres realized the motionless centaur standing by and, roaring in rage, lunged at Sunaya. The bow in the centaur's hand did not shoot another sharp arrow, but she stood motionless, coldly watching these damned ogres, an unusually distinct whooshing sound resounding from above her head. A red dragon descended from the sky, its icy sharp claws easily piercing the bodies of the ogres. With a forceful thrust, the dragon tore the robust bodies of the ogres into halves as if tearing a piece of thin paper. It left only 2 ogres standing there, entirely covered in the blood and fluids of their compatriots, trembling in fright. The red dragon's power was undeniable. The cold predatory gaze of the dragon seemed to lock onto the ogres' flesh and minds. Without a strong leader like the ogre tyrant Moergo, these ogre warriors didn't even have the courage to step forward in front of the red dragon. With a snort, Karon exhaled 2 sparks from his nostrils and said, "Take them back to the tribe, I have some use for these 2 ogres." With that, he soared into the sky. The centaur bowed down to acknowledge her master, then stood up and pulled down several vines from a nearby tree to casually bind them around the ogres' necks, leading them like hounds back in the direction of the camp. Karon and Sunaya returned to the camp with the captured ogres without causing much of a stir. The ogres frequently captured centaur warriors to mistreat, and the centaurs often brought back captured ogres for execution. Nevertheless, this act undeniably earned Karon favor among the young centaurs there. However, the red dragon ignored these for the time being, instructing Sunaya to bring the 2 ogres into the tent. He needed to learn some of the ogre language from them. But the ogres had yet to form a significant civilization, and their language often involved gestures and shouts, forcing Karon to concentrate intensely to understand the meaning of their language. Sometimes, when the pressed ogres could only stammer nonsensically, Karon's 2 slaps would spark inspiration, prompting the ogres to continue jabbering and teaching Karon. In this manner, Karon stayed in the tent for 2 full days. The dragon's innate talent for learning the languages of most creatures enabled the red dragon to quickly grasp a part of the ogre language. He only needed enough to be useful, not to entirely master the ogre language. Then he tossed the ogres, now drained of spirit, out of his tent for the centaurs to handle. He then had Sunaya fetch the centaur leader, Kali, as Karon's simple plan required the centaurs' cooperation. "Lord Karon." Kali and her mate Zogo entered the tent together. Lately, these centaurs also hoped the dragon would promptly lead the centaur tribe in a counterattack against the ogres, but they were now merely the red dragon's beloved ones, subject to the red dragon's will. Thus, upon hearing Karon's summons, they came immediately, their eyes full of hope gazing at the red dragon squatting on the plush fur. The words of the red dragon did not disappoint them. Karon gave the centaur leader an order, "Go gather the most adept warriors of the centaur tribe, Kali. I will lead you in delivering a crushing blow to those ogres. Go, bring your sharpest weapons and your sturdiest shields. I'll be right here." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 36-35, Insults. Chapter 36, Chapter 35, Insults. The silhouette of the red dragon flying high in the sky seemed hidden among the drifting white clouds. To the centaur warriors, the massive body of the red dragon appeared to be almost the same size as an eagle. The giant dragon's vision, countless times sharper than an eagle's, allowed Karon to easily spot the tracks of the ogres moving in the dense forest. He adjusted his throat to mimic the sharp cry of the prairie eagle. The centaur tribe's elite warriors almost all came out in full force, carrying well-maintained longbows and old shotguns stained with blood and rust, silently following behind the centaur leader, Kali. The strongest warrior in the centaur tribe held in their hands a bronze spear, a powerful weapon passed down through generations, capable of easily piercing through shields. Guided by Karon's eagle cry, the centaur warriors quickly spread out and infiltrated, surrounding the unsuspecting ogres not far ahead. Under the attack of the centaur warriors, the solitary or grouped ogres had almost no chance to resist before being taken down. The centaurs turned into harrowing phantoms in the forest, all-knowing and omnipresent, swiftly cutting down the ogre tribe's warriors scattered outside for patrol or hunting. The ogres, disorganized as they were, didn't realize there was anything unusual happening within their territory. Thus, progressing slowly, by evening, the centaur tribe's forces had approached within dozens of miles of the ogre tribe. Under Kali's gesture, they quietly gnawed on jerky brought from the tribe to replenish their physical strength, then began to rest with eyes closed. Karon, however, without rest, continued to glide high in the sky day and night. The darkness of night couldn't obscure his vision. He discovered white dragon Gomot and blue dragon Axi trapped within the ogre tribe. Carlet seemed to have been taken somewhere by these ogres. No traces of humans were found in the ogre camp, but the humans' big ships were still docked in the natural harbor in the Gulf. Only a few crew members were seen on the ship, arousing some suspicion in Karon's mind. The good news was that the two-headed ogre mage and the beautiful giant demon, looking like a human, seemed to be still recovering. Karon only spotted Moergo, busying about in the camp, among those he needed to pay extra attention to. This ogre's physical strength was clearly substantial, exhausting several captured centaurs throughout the whole first half of the night. This gave Karon a bit more confidence in the plan for tomorrow. Meanwhile, Will and his group, who were still stationed far at the Dragon Nest Canyon, received the Red Dragon's news through Mage Loksu. "You mean that Red Dragon actually plans to attack the ogre camp?" Will Clarence was overjoyed. He had been waiting here to capture the ogres and that special Red Dragon mentioned by Orsis. He was considering actively going to capture it if the Red Dragon didn't come soon. Now, finding that the Red Dragon seemed to be walking into a trap, how could he be anything but happy? That Red Dragon keeps loitering near the ogre camp, likely intending to attack. However, he's not one of those reckless brainless dragons. He should have some preparation, especially since our ship and supplies are still there. Mage Loksu had no habit of underestimating the opponent. With a clear system of civilized language that humans already possessed, the wise two-headed mage could naturally learn it with ease. He stepped forward and said to them, "Don't worry, Moergo can handle that juvenile dragon. Once he captures that cunning red dragon, our transaction will soon be completed." Will Clarence could understand the ogre's intention, and he laughed heartily, saying, "Don't worry about the Clarence clan's credibility, your reward will be delivered as promised. Come on, I can't wait to see my spoils of war." Ignoring the forest's dangers, these people, taking captive juvenile dragons with them, ventured into the night, for they were stronger than the lurking dangers in the forest. Dawn soon arrived, and the ogre camp was still in quietude. The powerful tribe gave these ogres a great sense of security. Even the necessary guards were snoring on their posts, making a noise that even a giant dragon would find disturbing. The red dragon silently descended from the sky, its sharp claws tearing apart the sleeping ogres at the camp entrance. Its strong body smashed through the large gates made of thick logs, as Kali and Zogo led a few centaur warriors charging in. The sharp shotguns pierced into the ogres sprawling and sleeping soundly in the clearing. These normally powerful ogre warriors at this moment were just like fragile chickens under the half-elves, awaiting slaughter. At this moment, the centaur warriors only regretted that their shotguns weren't sharp knives. The process of stabbing and retrieving the shotguns seemed a waste of time and wasn't satisfying enough to them. Karon, the dangerous red dragon, took to the sky, spewing his violent dragon fire around the camp, specifically targeting the ogres' wooden houses used for living and storage. Quickly, the fire raged and surged. The ogres, killed in their sleep, didn't have the chance to make a sound before forever closing their eyes, but those roasted by the dragon fire woke up, screaming as they rushed out of their houses, covered in flames, towards the nearby sea. The ogre tribe's tyrant, Moergo, was also awakened. His single eye flashed with unimaginable fury and killing intent as he roared to arm himself, intent on slaying the red dragon and the daring centaurs into mincemeat, and savoring them bit by bit. "Quick, retreat!" Ever alert to the ogres, the red dragon decisively commanded, knowing that in a short time his dragon fire couldn't cause significant harm to Moergo. Ogres weren't fools to just stand there waiting for him, so the priority was always to eliminate the active ogre forces. But now, to delay Moergo and buy the centaurs time to retreat, he had to unleash a breath of dragon fire towards Moergo, whose handily wielded giant axe easily intercepted it. The ogre's horn emitted a tinge of red, effectively insulating the heat of the dragon fire. Yet, the momentary delay was sufficient. Kali and Zogo had already gathered the centaurs and were retreating into the forest, and Karon also took to the air. He ignored several centaur warriors, caught in the frenzy of battle, who didn't heed his command to retreat in time, leaving them to be cut to pieces by the furious ogres. Instead, he controlled his speed, kept near the ground, and shouted insults at Moergo using the ogre language he had just learned. "You vile, low-born crossbreed bastard of a kobold and a goblin with a single eye. This is just a minor lesson for you. Next time I come, I'll squash you like a bug. Then I'll shove that ugly chamber pot you have for a head, which even the jackal wolf man would vomit at the sight of, into your rear, so you can savor a taste of the stench emanating from your own body." This loathsome red dragon, not only unceasingly insulting the already infuriated ogre with words, but occasionally using crude body language to enact the ogre's vulgar gestures. Ogre Moergo was so enraged that the single eye on his forehead was veined with blood, fierce veins throbbing across his hideous face, panting heavily, shouting to the awakened ogre warriors, "You go and protect the slumbering Fafnir. Don't let these pests disturb her." Then, brandishing his giant axe, he stomped off to pursue the red dragon, which alternately flew high and low in front of him. He swore by his ogre ancestors' blood that even if he had to chase to the ends of this forest today, he would kill that foul-mouthed red dragon. And then, turn its head into his chamber pot, forever trampled underfoot, ensuring the red dragon never rests in peace. Hanging back at a distance, the white dragon Gomot and blue dragon Axi exchanged glances, originally perplexed why Karon hadn't come for their rescue. Simultaneously, a mutual and enlightened understanding arose in their eyes. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 37-36, Death of the Ogre Tyrant. Chapter 37, Chapter 36, Death of the Ogre Tyrant. The furious ogre tyrant displayed his formidable strength, towering at 6 meters. The tyrant with bloodline at its peak rampaged through the forest, easily crushing many thick trees underfoot. Thick vines blocking the ogre's path were no stronger than cobwebs. His scarlet single eye emanated a chilling killing intent, firmly locking onto the figure ahead, moving just as quickly as the red dragon gliding through the forest. Even as the juvenile dragon sped through the dense woods, the obstacles of the trees didn't make him much faster than the ogre tyrant who powered through on foot, especially since he intentionally sought to lure him. He incessantly used the little ogre language he'd learned to provoke Moergo's mind, engulfed by fury while maneuvering through the thickly wooded forest, demanded his focus and energy to evade obstacles. Finally, amidst particularly dense woods, while avoiding entangled vines, the red dragon exposed a perfect vulnerability to the ogre. With a hideous grin, his strong arms tensed with muscles, the long giant axe glowed with a blood-colored light, silently but swiftly splitting the air, targeting the red dragon's rear. At this moment, Karon's heart rang like an alarm bell, his perception expanded to the limit, trying to track the trajectory of the long axe. While in a state of mental overclocking, he did his best to roll and contract his body, yet the giant axe came too fast, like slashing through the void, grazing past, slicing a portion of the red dragon's wing. "Ow!" Karon cried out in pain, feigning a collapse, sliding 10 meters along the ground, only to crash into a thick tree, leaving 2 deep marks with his hard dragon horn. "You damn pest, why aren't you cursing now?" Moergo shouted excitedly, "I'll crush you like a bug, I don't care about any dealings, today Ogre King Moergo will beat you, you foul-mouthed red dragon, to death." Moergo stepped forward, the thrill of the hunt clouded his mind and senses, and in the next moment, his heavy body suddenly fell as the once stable ground turned into a deep pit, a trap sufficient to hold a 6-meter-tall ogre, with earth and vine webs together falling, unable to hide the shotguns pointing upwards at the trap's base. The unprepared ogre had his thick foot pierced by the shotguns, although the skin on the ogre tyrant's feet had hardened through toil. it couldn't provide the defense like steel, resulting in a rage-filled roar echoing through the forest. Centaurs hidden in the forest emerged at this moment, rushing from the tall treetops and behind broad trunks. Nets woven of tough vines fell from above, countless sharp arrows rained down, targeting the ogre falling into the trap. But Moergo, with his ancestral bloodline, was not easily beaten. The red glow on his single horn spread over his body, his inherently resilient skin became even more sturdy. Most of the arrows, made from bone and sharp teeth, were stopped by the strong skin. Only some stronger warriors' arrows and shotguns pierced his body a short distance, but were quickly seized by tight muscles, with not a drop of blood oozing. You weak beings think this can harm King Moergo? The ogre laughed angrily, easily tearing apart the layers of vine nets shrouding his head, climbing up the edge of the pit under the continuous arrow rain, revealing his upper body, intending to crush the weak enemies before him with his fists upon emerging. Whiz! A sharp arrow flew towards the ogre's single eye with a piercing sound. Sunaya, who'd waited for the perfect moment, finally struck. The powerful magic bow and arrow released a snake-like lethal arrow just as Moergo stepped onto the ground but hadn't yet steadied himself. The ogre only managed to close his single eye, with his thick fingers blocking in front. Thud! The sharp arrow deeply pierced the edge of the ogre's hand, the arrowhead frighteningly close to the single eye. But, answering the call, Karon simultaneously launched his assault. His robust frame, like a tiger in the forest, unleashed unimaginable force with soil spraying around his feet, barely slower than the arrow before leaping up. Red Dragon's muscled hind paws firmly clasped the ogre's thick hands, his sharp dragon claws unhesitatingly pierced the head of the ogre as hard as steel. Fierce dragon fire lit his chest and belly, surging forth dangerously, the blazing blue flame rushing towards Moergo's single eye. The ogre cried in fury and terror, the agonizing pain unimaginable. His tenacious life force prevented immediate death even with his head pierced. The blood-colored flow on the single horn suddenly swelled, the unceasing dragon fire brought him the taste of death, the blood-colored flow on his horn gradually dwindled under the searing flames. Terrified of death, unmatched power flooded through him, his vascular arms attempted to pry the dragon's clamp on his hind limbs but the dragon's surge of force couldn't be moved easily at this moment. So, Moergo's horn fiercely thrust upward, with a sudden jab, it pierced the dragon's left forelimb locked by the skull. But suddenly, the ogre's actions stopped, the immense power vanished without a trace, both arms fell limply. Centaurs on the ground, stepping four hooves and charging fast like meteors, Centaur Kali wielded a long spear at this moment, thrusting the bronze spear into Moergo's chest, piercing through, striking the source of the ogre tyrant's life force, the heart pulsating with endless vitality. Bang! The ogre's towering body fell. The tyrant who once dominated this land ceased forever. Roar! Karon roared standing on the ogre's corpse, a voice piercing and resonant like a tiger's roar in the jungle, stirring all beasts within. The centaur warriors observed the tyrant they couldn't defeat, now trodden beneath the red dragon's feet. Finally, they all yielded, laying down their long bows and arrows. With their leader they bowed around their liege, kneeling with heartfelt conviction. The dense forest only echoed with the dragon's roar and the low reverberated reverence of the centaur warriors. Praise the leader of the centaur tribe, the mighty red giant dragon, ruler of wasteland and forest, our Lord Karon. Karon lowered his head, gazing at the centaur group for a long time before speaking. Rise, rest here, prepare, today I will destroy the ogre tribe on this land. This was the first time the red dragon issued commands directly, not relayed through Kali, the centaur leader, and his orders were executed without question. The rising centaurs glanced respectfully at the red dragon, then gathered to sit, replenishing their physical strength with food, fully accepting the red dragon's commands without seeking Kali's guidance as before. Karon then turned to instruct Kali. Go, Kali, present me the ogre's head, this will be my trophy and a keepsake for the centaur tribe. Under your command, my lord. Kali, without any dissatisfaction, executed Karon's wishes, cutting off the ogre's head, extracting the heart, offering it to the red dragon. But the red dragon refused the ogre's heart, though he was somewhat wounded, needing nutrition to speed healing. Karon opened his relaxed dragon claw, gently rested it on Kali's forehead, warmly saying, "This is your trophy, Kali." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 38-37, Fafnir's Ambition. Chapter 38, Chapter 37, Fafnir's Ambition. The ogre camp finally returned to its semblance of past tranquility after the ravaging by the red dragon and the centaur, except for the traces of buildings turned to ash by the unextinguished dragon fire and the bodies strewn across the ground. The bodies of the dead ogres and shredded centaurs were piled together. These ogres had not discarded the customs left by ancient times. They were still on the brink of civilization's ignorance, something ogre giantess Fafnir could not reverse in merely a dozen years. So these bodies would become the ogre's food. They would always make full use of all available resources, perhaps the only aspect that could be considered a virtue of the ogres. As for Moergo, who tracked the departing red dragon alone, even the awakened ogre giant demon did not worry about this ogre in the slightest. Even though Fafnir looked down on this ogre, she had to admit the powerful strength of the ogre tyrant. Long ago, the leader of the centaur tribe was brutally torn apart by the ogre tyrant, surrounded by the centaurs, using his bare hands. These ogres still yearned for Moergo to drag back the corpse of the red dragon, allowing them to have a share. These ogres had tasted everything in this forest, except the flavor of the giant dragon's flesh. The red dragon was so strong and fierce, eating it might enable the warriors in the tribe to grow a second head. The warriors who drank the dragon blood might awaken the great ancestral bloodline like ogre tyrant Moergo and become a master among the ogre tribe. Such thoughts indeed stirred some cravings among the ogres. But when the silhouette of the red dragon soared above the ogre camp, all ogres were filled with intense doubt. The red dragon came back, so where is Moergo? The ogre giant demon was no longer at ease. How could the red dragon return? It was known that Moergo was not only the strongest in the ogre tribe but also the most adept at tracking prey. No prey ever escaped the punishment of his giant axe. Maybe Moergo was right behind the red dragon. He was about to return. Moergo came back. The massive head of the ogre tyrant, scorched by the dragon fire, was hurled down by the roaring red dragon from mid-air. The steel-hard skull landed heavily in the center of the ogre camp, raising a cloud of dust. From the fierce head, Moergo's spirit, even in death, still emanated the powerful ogre-exclusive aura of defiance. Even the particularly strong-minded ogre giantess Fafnir could not help but feel a surreal sense of panic from deep within, perhaps heralding the doomsday of the ogre tribe today. The rampaging dragon fire spread once more in the fear-shrouded ogre tribe, where the formidable ogre warriors in the forest were chased by the centaurs they previously looked down upon. They forgot that they held far superior and sharper weapons than the bone spears and wooden spears, forgot that their leather armor was far tougher than the beast hide donned by their enemies, only focused on fleeing like the prey that once fled under their tyranny. The warriors of the centaur tribe had never felt so exhilarated as today, the pounding hooves propelling the shotguns in their hands to pierce through the enemy's bodies casually, with the enemies even too terrified to resist. The mighty centaur Zudge charged at the forefront, his long shotgun piercing through two fleeing ogres at once. Before he could retract the shotgun, he impacted a third ogre, the half-inch gun point extending from the bodies of the two ogres stabbed into the enemy's heart. Zudge pushed forward, leaving his weapon within the ogre's body, picking up the iron spear dropped by those ogres to continue the slaughter. Behind him were Oni and Kali, who likewise had switched weapons. The three strongest warriors led the sturdy centaurs, trampling blood underfoot, turning the ogre camp into a domain of carnage. Karon did not waste time chasing down the already spiritless ogres. After releasing dragon fire around the camp, he ignited every corner of the ogre camp with the unextinguished dragon fire. Then he folded his wings and landed. Although relying on magic power, the dragon could still fly, missing half a wing made controlling his direction and speed during flight tricky. He stepped to the white dragon and blue dragon laid down by the centaurs earlier. The two dragons, tormented considerably, appeared mentally fatigued, but their eyes brightened upon seeing the red dragon's arrival. "I knew you'd come to rescue us, Karon." The white dragon Gomot struggled to move forward. Despite being force-fed pounds of poison each day, the giant dragon's body was now weary and weak. The white dragon crawled before Karon, lifted his head, and looked at the tranquil red dragon. Timid and cowardly, he was not disappointed. Karon still protected him, as he always did with the dragon group. "I didn't agree to the ogre's request to betray you all," the white dragon spoke as a child seeking praise. "Carlet betrayed the dragon group, Karon, you must be careful." The red dragon didn't speak but lowered his head, using his intact right claw to assist the white dragon up, gently touching the white dragon's forehead with his own head, then bumped heads with Axie beside him, embarrassed by his youth as a young dragon. The red dragon finally spoke, "Gomot, you are very brave and did well. I cannot ask for more. Also, Axie, both of you are part of the dragon group and my brothers, I will not abandon you." As for Carlet, she made her choice, and naturally, she will bear the consequences. Karon raised his head, pointed at the remaining viable ogre forces gathering around the resisting ogre giant demon, and said, "Come, follow me, watch me crush those daring enough to invade the dragon group, bringing the flames of revenge and blood to this land." Fafnir was surrounded by the ogres who hadn't escaped into the forest in front of the tent, the almost transparent gauze veiling her alluring figure unable to hide it. She inclined her ear, listening to the chatter of the forest beldams perched on her arm. It was the ogre dual-headed wizard Sahai's message conveyed through other banshees. She knew she might have one more chance. Fafnir could choose to escape into the forest like other fleeing ogres, but doing so would mean the ogres could never rise again, only becoming a wandering tribe like other weaker clans, something a ambitious Fafnir could not endure. Moreover, she believed in the bloodline inherited from the ancient soul-devouring sea demon. As long as she could control the red dragon, the situation would be reversed, and the ogre tribe would be stronger than ever before. The potential of the giant dragon was far beyond the foolish ogre tyrant's grasp. The message from the ogre mage Sahai further solidified her resolve, so she raised her arm reflecting in the sunlight to shout, "We surrender, the ogre tribe is willing to submit to the powerful giant dragon." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com.